Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Snoozy Scientist, where we gently wander through the mysteries of science, one sleepy yawn at a time. Whether you're listening from the comfort of your bed, wrapped in a blanket, or floating in that dreamy space between waking and sleeping, you're exactly where you need to be. Tonight, we're slipping beneath the waves into a world that is darker, stranger, and far more mysterious than the one above. A place where shadows stretch longer than skyscrapers and where creatures grow to sizes that defy imagination. In the endless dark of the ocean, life has taken forms so immense, so alien, that they seem to belong more to legends than to biology. For centuries, sailors whispered of monsters in the deep, and today we know they were real and bigger than the myths ever imagined. One of them is the blue whale, with a body that outweighs the largest dinosaur to ever walk the earth. It is the heaviest creature ever to live on our planet. Its heart alone is the size of a car, and its tongue as heavy as an elephant, and yet it moves with effortless grace through the buoyant sea. Another is the colossal squid. Its tentacles stretch longer than buses, each lined with hooks that rotate like weapons from another world. Its eyes are as wide as dinner plates and are the largest biological eyes ever discovered, built to pierce the eternal night of the abyss. And even the smallest of creatures, no bigger than your thumb, in shallow waters, swell into giants when they descend into the cold and crushing dark. The humble isopod, for example, a tiny bug-like creature on land, swells into a football-sized scavenger when it descends to the sea floor. Ocean gigantism doesn't belong to one group alone. It appears again and again in crustaceans, in fish, in cephalopods, even in drifting plankton that grow large enough to be seen with the naked eye. Over and over, the deep sea pushes life toward scale, toward enormity, toward awe. But why does the ocean breed such giants? What unseen forces of the abyss turn ordinary creatures into beings that stretch the limits of possibility? And perhaps most haunting of all, could there still be monsters we have not yet seen, hiding in the black waters below? Tonight, we'll drift gently into that mystery to see how giants are born and how the sea blurs the line between legend and reality. And perhaps to wonder if what we've found so far is only the beginning, if the greatest giants of the sea are still waiting in the dark. But before we begin, if you enjoy videos like this, slow, soothing, and quietly filled with wonder, I'd love it if you gave this one a gentle like, and maybe tapped subscribe. It helps more curious minds like you find their way to this peaceful little corner of the internet, and lets the algorithm know that sleep and science go perfectly together. And if you'd be so kind, let me know in the comments, where are you winding down from tonight, and what time is it there? It's always a joy to see how far across the world this little sleepy corner of science travels. Now take a deep breath, close your eyes, let your shoulders soften, and let's begin. When we look up at the night sky, it is easy to feel small. The stars seem so distant, the vastness of the universe pressing in on our thoughts. Yet, in a way that surprises many, it is not space, but the ocean that remains the most uncharted frontier of our planet. Scientists estimate that nearly 80% of the ocean floor is still unexplored. Imagine that for a moment. We have sent probes to Mars, we have landed rovers on the dusty surface of distant worlds, but here on Earth, beneath the very waves that touch every shoreline, there are still vast territories that remain untouched, unseen, and unknown. The reason lies not in distance, but in difficulty. Space may be cold and far away, but the ocean is heavy, relentless, and crushing. For every 10 meters that you descend below the surface, the pressure increases as though the weight of an entire atmosphere is pressing down on you. By the time you have reached the deepest trenches, more than 6 miles beneath the surface, the pressure is so immense that it would crush steel. Submarines must be built like fortresses to survive it, and still they groan under the force. And then there is the cold. Unlike the warmth of the shallow seas, where sunlight can nurture coral reefs and swaying kelp forests, the deep ocean is locked in a chill so constant it feels eternal. Water hovers just above freezing, cold enough to slow the very beating of hearts and the movement of muscles. Down there, warmth is a rare treasure, often found only near volcanic vents or chemical seeps. For most life, survival in this icy stillness requires extraordinary adaptations. But perhaps the most daunting feature of all is the darkness. Sunlight can only travel so far through water, and within a few hundred meters, it fades into dim blue twilight. Beyond that, light vanishes entirely, and the world becomes a place of endless night. In this blackness, eyes grow enormous to catch the faintest shimmer, or else vanish altogether, leaving creatures to sense the world with other tools. Some animals bring their own lanterns, glowing with bioluminescence, a chemical spark inside their bodies that creates a private light show in the abyss. It is a place of living constellations, tiny sparks against the black, proof that even in the absence of the sun, life will find a way to see. These extremes, so crushing and so alien, shape life in ways that defy ordinary imagination. Fish grow transparent, their bones reduced to wisps so they can survive the weight of the water pressing in. Worms thrive in scalding waters, where sulfur clouds rise from the vents of the seafloor. Crustaceans develop bodies far larger than their shallow water cousins, their bulk a response to the cold and the slow pace of life in the abyss. The deeper we go, the stranger life becomes. It is as if the ocean delights in breaking the rules, creating forms that seem drawn from dreams and nightmares alike. The challenges of exploration only add to the mystery. Sending humans into the deepest waters is perilous, and even the most advanced remotely operated vehicles can only glimpse small patches of the seafloor at a time. Each expedition uncovers new species, often so unusual that they rewrite what scientists thought they knew about biology. One dive may reveal a glowing jelly drifting like a phantom balloon. Another may capture the sudden flash of a fish with jaws that unhinge wider than its body. Every discovery is a reminder of how little we have truly seen, and so the ocean remains our planet's most secretive frontier. Its vast stretches are not barren, but filled with life that has been sculpted by pressure, cold, and dark. It is a place where the rules of survival are rewritten and where evolution takes daring leaps. It challenges us to accept that Earth itself still holds mysteries as great as those of the stars above. Just as the vastness of this frontier leaves us awed, so too does it make us wonder about the inhabitants that call it home. If such extremes can shape life into strange and powerful forms, then what of the giants that swim within it? What secrets of size and survival are hidden in those waters where light cannot reach? From the freezing darkness of the unexplored deep, let us rise gently into the open waters, where one of the ocean's greatest mysteries glides silently through the blue. Here swims the largest animal that has ever existed on our planet, larger even than the colossal dinosaurs that once ruled the land. It is the blue whale, a creature so immense that it is almost impossible for the human mind to truly comprehend its size. The blue whale can weigh up to 200 tons, a figure so vast it is hard to imagine until you begin to compare it to the familiar. That weight is equal to about 30 elephants combined, or more than 3 fully loaded airplanes. Its heart alone is the size of a small car, so large that a child could crawl through its arteries. With each slow, thunderous beat, that heart pumps gallons upon gallons of blood through a body longer than a basketball court. Its tongue alone is as heavy as an elephant, a mass of living muscle inside a mouth capable of engulfing nearly 100 tons of seawater in a single gulp. Standing beside such an animal is impossible in the way we stand beside other creatures, for the scale of the whale makes us seem like nothing more than drifting plankton. Divers who have had the rare chance to encounter one in the open ocean describe the experience as standing before a living continent, a vast moving presence that humbles every sense. On land, such a creature could never exist. The weight of its body would crush its bones, the pull of gravity making every step impossible. Even the largest land dwellers of history, like Argentinosaurus or Brachiosaurus, reached nowhere near the scale of the blue whale. What makes such enormity possible is the buoyant embrace of water. In the sea, the body is lifted and supported, free from the constant pressure of gravity that limits life on land. Here in this weightless realm, evolution has written a new chapter, allowing life to push past boundaries and reach scales that seem to belong to dreams. And yet, for all its enormity, the blue whale does not hunt with teeth or claws, nor does it rely on ferocity. Instead, its survival depends on the tiniest of prey, krill. These shrimp-like creatures, each no longer than a fingernail, gather in swarms so dense they can be seen from space, painting the waters in clouds of pink and red. It is upon these tiny animals that the blue whale feasts. Opening its mouth wide, it lunges forward, taking in more than 100 tons of seawater in a single strike. Then, with the help of baleen plates hanging like curtains from its upper jaw, it filters out the water, leaving behind millions of krill to be swallowed in one effortless sweep. This delicate balance between the largest animal on Earth and some of the smallest illustrates a truth about the ocean. Size is not always a weapon. Ferocity is not always the key to survival. Instead, it is abundance, adaptation, and efficiency that determine who thrives. The blue whale has evolved into a living paradox, a creature of staggering immensity that depends entirely on the tiniest threads of life. Its life is shaped by migration, a constant journey between feeding grounds and breeding grounds. In the cold polar waters, where krill are plentiful, the whales gather to feed, consuming several tons of these tiny creatures every single day. When the seasons shift and the polar seas grow harsh, they travel thousands of miles to warmer waters, where they give birth and raise their young. Calves are born already immense, weighing more than an adult elephant, and they grow quickly, drinking more than 100 gallons of milk from their mothers each day. To witness such a being is to be reminded of the ocean's unique power. The blue whale is not just an animal, it is a monument of flesh and bone, a reminder that our world holds wonders beyond comparison. Its size dwarfs every dinosaur, its presence reshapes the very scale of life itself. And it is only in the boundless waters of the ocean that such a creature can exist, supported by the buoyancy of the sea, sustained by the smallest of prey, and carried across the globe by currents older than memory. From the open waters where the giants roam, the journey of the ocean's mysteries does not stop. While the blue whale dominates the surface, deep below, another silent war is unfolding. In those shadowed depths, colossal squids clash with mighty sperm whales, leaving scars and legends behind, a reminder that even in the hidden dark, battles of giants shape the story of the sea. Far below the sunlit surface, in waters where light can no longer reach, another giant moves through the blackness. It is not the gentle grazer of krill that we just left behind, but a predator armed with weapons that seem to belong to another world. The colossal squid drifts in the dark, its body stretching more than 40 feet, its tentacles tipped with sharp hooks that rotate like cruel little blades. Its eyes, as wide as dinner plates, are the largest of any animal on Earth, so vast that they can detect the faint shimmer of a distant shadow, the subtle glow of bioluminescence, or the pale reflection of a predator moving silently in the abyss. These are the tools of survival in a realm where sight itself is a rare gift, and every encounter can mean life or death. Yet, even for a creature so formidable, there is an enemy waiting in the dark that dwarfs it in both size and hunger. The sperm whale, the largest toothed predator alive today, dives thousands of feet below the surface to hunt in the same waters the colossal squid calls home. Growing to lengths of more than 60 feet and weighing as much as 50 tons, the sperm whale is a living fortress, its massive head filled with echolocation organs that allow it to navigate and hunt in total blackness. With powerful clicks that reverberate like cannon fire, the whale scans the water, mapping the world around it with sound, homing in on its prey with deadly accuracy. When the paths of these two giants cross, the ocean becomes a battlefield hidden from human eyes. The squid lashes out with its hooked tentacles, wrapping them tightly around the whale's body, embedding its suckers deep into flesh. In response, the whale thrashes and rolls, using its strength and size to overpower the struggling squid. Though humans have never seen such battles directly, the evidence is carved into the skin of the whales themselves. Deep scars, circular and white, stretch across their faces and bodies, scars left by the suckers of colossal squids during desperate fights for survival. Each mark is a silent record of a war waged in darkness, where the outcome is measured in life and death. Scientists believe this conflict has fueled an evolutionary arms race. For the squid, growing larger provides a chance to defend against predators, giving it the reach and power to resist being swallowed whole. For the whale, growing bigger means it can dive deeper, stay submerged longer, and wrestle its prey into submission. Across countless generations, size itself has become a weapon, each side escalating until both reached extremes beyond what the surface world could ever sustain. It is a hidden contest of giants, playing out far beneath the waves, unseen and unimaginable, until scars and carcasses floated back to us as proof. The most remarkable part of this story is not only the size of the creatures, but also the secrecy of their war. The sperm whale spends much of its life far from human view, diving for nearly an hour at a time to depths where pressure would crush a submarine. The colossal squid is even more elusive, living in the twilight and midnight zones, only rarely brought to the surface by accident or death. For centuries they remained legends, whispered about by sailors who found strange beaks and eyes washed ashore, but never witnessed in life. Even now, despite our technology, we know only fragments of their story, pieced together from scars, remains, and fleeting encounters caught on deep-sea cameras. To think of these battles is to be reminded of how little of the ocean we truly understand. Somewhere in the abyss, creatures longer than buses and heavier than trucks are locked in combat, shaping one another's evolution in silence. Their war is ongoing, each encounter rewriting the balance of survival. And if battles of such staggering scale can take place without us ever seeing them, it raises an unsettling question. What else might be happening in the darkness, beyond the reach of our eyes, where life grows to impossible sizes and predators and prey push each other to the very edge of what evolution can create? The scars on the skin of the sperm whale tell us that size matters in the dark ocean, but the battles of giants are only one piece of the story. To understand why the sea, again and again, produces creatures of such staggering proportions, we need to look at the science of gigantism. The ocean is not simply a stage where large animals happen to appear. It is a place whose very conditions seem to encourage life to grow bigger, stranger, and more extreme than anywhere else on Earth. One of the most important factors is the cold. As water grows colder, the pace of life itself begins to slow. A slower metabolism means that creatures can stretch their resources farther surviving with less energy, and in some cases, living longer than their warmer water relatives. Cold water acts almost like a preservative, giving organisms more time to grow and more time to reach sizes that would be impossible in faster, warmer environments. That is why many of the most extreme examples of gigantism are found in the icy waters near the poles, where temperatures hover just above freezing year round. Then there is the matter of pressure. At depths where no sunlight reaches, the weight of the water above presses down with unimaginable force. For a human, it would feel like carrying a mountain on your chest. At these depths, small bodies collapse more easily, while larger, sturdier bodies are better able to endure the crushing environment. Size itself becomes a survival advantage, a way to resist the squeeze of the deep. Some creatures develop bodies that are jelly-like and flexible, bending with the pressure, while others grow large and strong, building resilience by sheer mass. Either way, the relationship between depth, pressure, and size is inescapable. Food scarcity also plays a role. In the ocean, meals are not always easy to find. Far below the surface, prey is spread thin, and survival often depends on endurance. For many animals, being large means being able to store more energy for the long stretches between meals. A giant isopod, for example, can gorge itself when food drifts down from above, storing the energy in its bulky frame, and then endure months or even years without eating again. Large size allows creatures to weather the feast and famine cycles of the deep sea, giving them an advantage in a world where meals are rare and unpredictable. What is remarkable is that gigantism has appeared across so many different types of ocean life. It is not confined to a single group or a single evolutionary path. Crustaceans grow massive in the depths, but so do cephalopods like the colossal squid, and fish, and even delicate jellyfish. Plankton, usually invisible to the naked eye, sometimes grow large enough to be seen drifting like snow in the water column. Again and again, life in the ocean has answered the same challenges with the same solution: get bigger. This is not an accident, it is a pattern written into the biology of the sea. Each of these factors, cold, pressure, scarcity, does not act in isolation. They combine and reinforce one another, creating an environment where gigantism is not only possible, but encouraged. Cold slows down the pace of life, allowing long growth. Pressure rewards sturdier, larger bodies. Scarcity rewards those who can store energy and endure long waits between meals. Layer these conditions together, and the ocean becomes, in effect, a giant making machine. It is as if the deep sea whispers the same instructions to every creature that drifts into its domain: grow larger, grow stronger, and adapt or vanish. The results are sometimes beautiful and sometimes terrifying. They remind us that the ocean is not passive. It shapes life with forces as strong and invisible as gravity itself. And the deeper we peer into its waters, the more we see this rule at work. If the blue whale is the ocean's masterpiece of scale, and the colossal squid its phantom warrior, then the truth is that they are part of a much wider story. Across the length and breadth of the sea, in trenches, in polar waters, and on the sea floor, evolution is quietly building giants. As we follow these threads further into the deep, the next step is to see where this pattern becomes most visible. The icy waters of the poles hold some of the strangest and most dramatic examples of gigantism anywhere on Earth. Creatures that in warmer seas would be small enough to sit in your palm grow to astonishing sizes in the chill of Antarctic currents, proof that the giant-making machine of the ocean is still very much at work. If the ocean is a machine that builds giants, then nowhere is its work more striking than in the frozen waters at the very edges of our planet. The seas that surround Antarctica and the icy currents that circle through the Arctic are filled with creatures that seem stretched beyond reason, swollen by the peculiar alchemy of cold and depth. Here, in places where the sunlight often hides for months at a time, the ocean's laws reveal themselves with clarity. Divers who descend into the polar waters describe scenes unlike anything they have seen elsewhere. The seafloor is littered with oversized sponges, their bodies rising like great towers from the sand. Some are as tall as a person, their forms branching upward like frozen forests beneath the waves. Moving among them are worms of unusual length and girth, their bodies thriving in conditions that would stunt or shrink their relatives in warmer seas. And crawling slowly across the bottom, like armored tanks from another age, are the giant isopods and amphipods, crustaceans that would normally fit in the curve of your palm, but here grow to the size of footballs. The explanation lies in the chemistry of cold water. Oxygen dissolves more easily in frigid seas than it does in warm ones. This means that every breath a creature takes is richer, every cell supplied with more of the fuel it needs to function. For an animal living in icy waters, this abundance of oxygen removes some of the limits that hold back growth in other parts of the world. It is as if the environment itself gives permission to expand, to add new cells, to stretch body plans to a larger scale. But oxygen is only part of the story. The deep cold slows life's tempo. In water that never rises above freezing, metabolism ticks like a slow clock, and energy is not burned away in a rush, but preserved carefully over time. With slower metabolisms, creatures are able to live longer lives. And with longer lives comes the chance to grow, to add layers of muscle, shell, and tissue year after year until the small becomes large and the large becomes immense. Where a warmer ocean might demand speed and quick reproduction, the polar sea rewards patience and endurance. The effect is visible everywhere. In the Antarctic, amphipods that would be an inch or two in temperate waters grow to lengths of half a foot or more. Starfish expand into sprawling shapes, with arms stretching wider than a dinner plate. Jellyfish become great floating bells, their tendrils drifting lazily through the current as if time itself moves slower here. Even simple sponges, creatures that do not move at all, reach ages of hundreds or even thousands of years, quietly growing larger with each passing season until they become monuments of the seafloor. To imagine these creatures is to feel a kind of wonder tinged with unease. The idea that a bug-like crustacean, small enough to hide under a rock in a tide pool, could grow into a creature the size of a football in the Antarctic waters makes the familiar feel suddenly alien. The rules that govern life on land, where size often comes with limits and restrictions, are rewritten completely in these frozen seas. It is no surprise that scientists often describe the poles as natural laboratories for evolution. The creatures here are experiments in scale, shaped by forces that are invisible but unrelenting: oxygen, temperature, and time. In this sense, the cold abyss is not a barren place, but one that hums quietly, with life that is slower, steadier, and larger than we are used to seeing. And so, as we drift among these strange giants of the polar seas, we begin to see the deeper truth. Gigantism is not an exception, but a pattern repeated across environments that push the limits of biology. If the cold allows such transformations, then what of the crushing pressure of the deepest trenches? Down there, where the ocean is heaviest and most relentless, life must face an entirely different set of rules, and size itself takes on a new role in the struggle to endure. The cold of the polar seas is only one of the forces that pushes life toward scale. As we drift further down, leaving even the faint twilight behind, another challenge begins to dominate. It is not one we can see with our eyes, yet it presses against us with every inch we descend. It is pressure. In the deep ocean, pressure is relentless, a constant weight created by the miles of water piled above. At the surface, the human body feels the weight of one atmosphere pressing against it, though we hardly notice it. But for every 10 meters you travel downward, that weight increases, stacking upon itself until it becomes unimaginable. At depths of several miles, the pressure is hundreds of times greater than anything we experience on land. For us, it would be impossible to survive. Lungs would collapse, bones would give way, metal hulls groan and crack under the force. Yet for the creatures that live here, this crushing weight is simply the air they breathe, the fabric of their world. Life has not only adapted to it, but has, in many cases, been shaped by it into forms that make the most of this invisible force. One of the strange truths of pressure is that smaller, softer bodies are more easily crushed than larger, sturdier ones. At depth, where the water's weight never relents, tiny, fragile structures do not hold up as well. Larger bodies, with thicker tissues and stronger skeletons, often fare better. Gigantism in this sense is more than spectacle. It is survival. To grow larger in the abyss is to resist collapse, to endure what smaller forms cannot. This influence reaches all the way down to the smallest building blocks of life. Proteins, the microscopic machines that make every cell function, behave differently under extreme pressure. At the surface, proteins fold and twist in ways that allow life to thrive, but in the deep, pressure tries to unravel them, pulling apart their delicate structures. To resist this, deep-sea creatures have evolved special proteins, more stable and resilient, and in some cases, aided by molecules known as piezolites that shield them from the crushing environment. The very chemistry of their existence is written with pressure in mind. Move upward in scale, and the influence continues. Cells themselves change, their membranes altered to remain flexible and fluid under crushing force. Without these adaptations, cells would stiffen and die, unable to carry nutrients or signals. In larger tissues, muscles and connective structures adapt as well, reinforcing the body against collapse. Skeletons, where they exist, become thicker and stronger, or in some species, vanish altogether, replaced with soft, gelatinous forms that simply yield to pressure rather than resist it. In this environment, size becomes a shield. A larger body has more space for reinforced tissues and more redundancy built into its design, giving it a better chance to survive. The results are creatures that seem almost designed to astonish us. Enormous amphipods crawling across the seafloor, their bodies built like armored suits, giant sea cucumbers drifting like bloated balloons, fish with massive heads and wide, flaring mouths, their proportions exaggerated as though stretched by the environment itself. To us, they appear alien, but to them, their size is not excess. It is necessity. This idea that size is not only an accident of evolution, but a direct response to the deep's crushing force, reveals how profoundly the ocean shapes its inhabitants. Every level of physiology, from the folding of a single protein to the strength of a skeleton, is tuned to withstand the weight of water, and the deeper the habitat, the more dramatic these changes become. It is as if the abyss issues its own command: grow large or be broken. Even for giants like the sperm whale, which we followed into the dark during its hunt for squid, pressure defines their limits. The whale can dive to depths of more than a mile, yet even it must eventually rise. Its lungs collapse under the force, and its body is built to endure only for a time. True deep-sea creatures, however, never return to the surface. They are born under pressure, live under pressure, and die under pressure, their bodies forever adapted to a world that would destroy ours in an instant. As we consider these adaptations, we begin to understand how pressure, cold, and scarcity intertwine, each reinforcing the other to encourage size. The deep becomes not only a place of survival but of transformation, an environment that sculpts biology into shapes that might seem impossible elsewhere. And if pressure rewards the large and punishes the small, then it is no surprise that so many of the deep's inhabitants reach sizes that astonish us. From the crushing dark trenches, another invisible force emerges to join the story. Pressure may dictate who can survive, but oxygen shapes how large survival can allow. And in the ocean, particularly in the rich, frigid waters of the poles, oxygen becomes one of the most powerful fuels for gigantism that life has ever known. From the crushing depths where pressure sculpts bodies into strange and powerful forms, another invisible force rises to shape the destiny of giants. That force is oxygen, the element that fuels every heartbeat, every flick of a fin, every movement of life itself. It may seem simple, as natural as breathing, but oxygen quietly determines how large creatures can grow, both on land and in the sea. On land, oxygen is carried through lungs, diffusing into blood, and traveling through vessels to reach muscles and organs. This system works well, but it has its limits. The farther oxygen has to travel, the harder it becomes for an animal to keep its body fueled. For giant creatures like the dinosaurs of old, massive skeletons and lungs push this system close to its edge. Eventually, the demands of oxygen transport set boundaries that land animals could not easily cross. No matter how strong their bones or how plentiful their food, they could only grow so large before their own bodies became too difficult to sustain. In the ocean, however, life is not bound by the same rules. Water itself carries dissolved oxygen, and aquatic creatures have evolved gills that extract it efficiently. Instead of relying solely on lungs and the pumping of blood to deliver oxygen, fish and many invertebrates can absorb it directly from the water as it flows across delicate membranes. For some small creatures, oxygen diffuses right through their skin, fueling them without any special organs at all. Combined with the buoyant support of water that frees them from the heavy pull of gravity, these adaptations give marine life a freedom that land dwellers cannot share. The physical limits that keep land creatures in check are relaxed, and the door to larger bodies opens wide. This is why we see such extremes in the sea. Whales can stretch to lengths greater than school buses and weigh more than 200 tons, their bodies supported by the buoyancy of the water and their muscles flooded with oxygen-rich blood during deep dives. Colossal squids can grow massive eyes and thick, muscular tentacles, each movement fueled by oxygen drawn from the cold water around them. Even delicate creatures like jellyfish can expand into enormous bells and trailing tendrils that capture food across wide swaths of ocean, their tissues sustained by oxygen diffusing through their gelatinous forms. Nowhere is the influence of oxygen clearer than in the polar seas. In icy water, oxygen dissolves more easily than in warmer seas, meaning each gulp of water that passes over a gill delivers more fuel for growth. This abundance combines with the slowed metabolism of cold environments, allowing animals to grow steadily and often to immense sizes. Antarctic amphipods, normally no longer than a fingernail in warmer waters, stretch into giants here, their bodies enlarged by the rich oxygen supply. Sea spiders, alien-looking and spindly, spread their legs as wide as dinner plates, thriving in a world where oxygen flows freely into their tissues. In this sense, the poles become greenhouses for giants, not because of warmth and light, but because of cold and oxygen. To understand how powerful oxygen can be, it helps to consider what happens when it is scarce. On land, insects are bound by this law more visibly than any other group. Hundreds of millions of years ago, during the Carboniferous period, oxygen levels in the atmosphere were far higher than they are today. Back then, dragonflies grew wings as wide as seagulls, and millipedes stretched to lengths of 6 feet, creeping through forests that looked more like alien jungles than anything familiar. Their simple breathing systems, which rely on air diffusing through tubes in their bodies rather than being pumped by lungs, could only support such size because of the oxygen-rich air. When oxygen levels in the atmosphere dropped to modern values, these giants could no longer survive. Insects shrank, and today their sizes are capped by the limits of oxygen transport. In the ocean, however, oxygen is not delivered through narrow tubes, but through broad gills, supported by the endless flow of water itself. Buoyancy removes the weight that gravity places on large bodies, and the cold currents of the poles supply oxygen in abundance. Where insects on land were forced to shrink back into the small forms we see today, their marine counterparts are free to expand into monsters of the deep, their growth unshackled by the same constraints. The oxygen factor shows us that gigantism is not only about the mysteries of pressure or the slowness of cold, it is also about fuel, the very breath of life, and in the ocean, that fuel is delivered with a generosity that allows bodies to swell, skeletons to expand, and muscles to push limits far beyond those of land. With each factor layered upon the next, the sea writes its own rules of scale, rules that allow life to reach sizes that feel more myth than reality. And yet, even with oxygen and buoyancy lifting creatures toward extremes, another invisible hand guides the process. Gravity, the ever-present force that defines life on land, is subdued in the water. Here, mass does not crush, and bones are not prisons. To understand why the ocean can outgrow the land so completely, we must look to this freedom from gravity itself and the role of buoyancy in making the ocean a true cradle of giants. If oxygen fuels the giants of the ocean and cold slows their lives into steady growth, then buoyancy is the quiet partner that makes their sheer size possible. To live in water is to live in a world where gravity loosens its grip. Every drop lifts, every current carries, and every body is supported by the weightless embrace of the sea. The ocean is, in many ways, a realm where the rules of mass are rewritten, where bones do not bear the crushing responsibility they must on land, and where flesh can grow and stretch without the fear of collapse. Think for a moment of the blue whale, the heaviest creature that has ever lived. It can weigh more than 200 tons, yet it moves with effortless grace, its body gliding like silk through the water. If that same body were placed on land, its skeleton would shatter under its own weight, its organs crushed by the relentless pull of gravity. The only reason such immensity is possible is because the sea itself helps to carry it, distributing its weight across the body and holding it in balance. In the ocean, every giant floats as though suspended in a cradle, its bulk softened by the water that surrounds it. Contrast this with the largest creatures to ever walk on land. Dinosaurs like Argentinosaurus towered high, stretching their long necks into the canopy and weighing perhaps 100 tons at the most. They were enormous, yes, but even they pale beside the whales. Their skeletons had to be built like cathedrals, columns of bone supporting each step, each breath a struggle against the force of gravity. Every ounce of their mass had to be carried by their muscles and bones, and as a result, there was a ceiling they could never pass. On land, giants were constantly negotiating with gravity, growing as large as their bones could allow, but never beyond. The ocean releases life from this burden. Here, the water itself becomes scaffolding, a constant invisible support that allows animals to expand past the limits of land. Fins spread wide to steer, tails flick with powerful strokes, and bodies of unimaginable size move as easily as a bird through the sky. The weight that would crush a creature on land simply does not exist in the same way beneath the waves. The ocean is a world where gravity does not matter, at least not in the way it shapes our lives above. This freedom explains why so many of the largest animals belong to the sea. Whales, sharks, squid, and jellyfish all take advantage of the buoyant lift of water. Some are fast and powerful, their muscles coiled for explosive movement, while others drift slowly, their bulk carried passively by the currents. Even the most fragile forms, like the lion's mane jellyfish, can grow to extraordinary lengths, their delicate bodies supported by the sea around them. Buoyancy does not discriminate. It lifts the armored and the delicate alike, giving each the chance to expand. There is something almost dreamlike about this weightless life. Imagine being a diver, suspended in the blue, your body no longer bound to the ground but carried effortlessly in every direction. For us, it is temporary, a fleeting taste of a different world. For ocean giants, it is the foundation of existence. They are born into buoyancy, they live within it, and they die in its embrace. And yet, even in this world of weightlessness, survival still demands adaptation. To grow enormous is not only to be supported, but also to find enough food to fuel such a body. Whales must sweep through entire swarms of krill. Squids must stretch their arms wide into the dark, ready to ensnare prey. Jellyfish must trail their tendrils across vast distances. Buoyancy frees them from gravity, but it also makes size an investment that only works if the ocean provides enough to sustain it. Still, when we look at the ocean compared to the land, the difference is undeniable. On land, gravity writes the rules, forcing even the largest giants to bow to its limits. In the sea, the water itself holds up the world's behemoths, allowing bodies to grow, stretch, and glide on a scale that would be impossible anywhere else. It is here, in this weightless world, that gigantism finds its perfect stage. And beneath this stage, another kind of giant crawls slowly across the seafloor, not a whale or a squid, but a creature that looks more like a bug than a leviathan. In the deep, armored shells scuttle across the sand, their bodies swollen far beyond the size we expect. They are the giant isopods, living proof that even the humblest forms of life can grow monstrous when the ocean bends its rules of scale. From the soaring freedom of whales carried by buoyancy, we now descend once again down to the shadowed seafloor, where a different kind of giant waits. Here, in the stillness of the deep, among the scattered bones of fish and the slow rain of organic debris falling from above, move creatures that look less like whales or squids and more like oversized insects from a dream. These are the giant isopods, scavengers of the abyss, and they are among the strangest and most unsettling examples of ocean gigantism. At first glance, a giant isopod resembles a pill bug, the tiny creatures that curl into a ball when disturbed in gardens and backyards. But while their land-dwelling cousins fit easily into the palm of your hand, the giant isopod can grow up to 20 inches long, nearly the size of a house cat. Their segmented shells arch over their bodies like armor, their many legs scuttle across the sand with unsettling precision, and their long antennae wave slowly in the darkness, probing for signs of food. In the gloom of the deep, where light never shines and colors vanish, their pale, ghost-like bodies look almost alien. The giant isopod is not a predator in the way we often imagine ocean monsters. It does not chase prey across the open water, nor does it strike from the shadows with teeth or tentacles. Instead, it is a scavenger, surviving in a world where food is rare, where every scrap matters. When a fish dies and drifts down from the surface, or when the carcass of a whale sinks into the abyss, giant isopods gather, clambering over one another to tear at the feast. Their strong jaws and sharp mandibles allow them to cut through skin, muscle, and even bone, turning decay into sustenance. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about them is their ability to endure hunger. In the deep ocean, meals can be separated by months or even years. To survive this scarcity, the giant isopod has evolved to store energy with incredible efficiency. When food is plentiful, it gorges itself until its body swells grotesquely, filling its stomach with as much as it can possibly hold. Then, when the ocean grows quiet and no food drifts down, it waits. A giant isopod can go without eating for years, slowing its metabolism to a crawl, moving only when necessary, conserving every ounce of energy. It is a life of extremes, where gluttony and famine are two sides of the same coin. This adaptation, though practical, adds to their eerie appearance. When bloated from a meal, their bodies stretch unnaturally, their legs splayed out as though barely able to carry the weight. To divers who have encountered them on the seafloor, they appear almost monstrous, like props from a science fiction film brought to life. Their resemblance to familiar insects makes them all the more disturbing, as if a backyard pillbug had been twisted into a creature from a nightmare. And yet, for all their unsettling presence, the giant isopods are proof of something important. Gigantism is not limited to predators. It is not only the whales that sweep through krill, or the colossal squids that battle whales in the dark, that embody this rule of the ocean. Even the scavengers, the quiet cleaners of the seafloor, grow enormous in the right conditions. Their size gives them the strength to endure the pressure, the stamina to survive long periods without food, and the capacity to make the most of every rare opportunity that drifts their way. In their armored bodies and alien forms, we see another side of the ocean's strange design. The sea does not only create giants that inspire awe, but also giants that unsettle us, reminding us that the deep is not built for our comfort. It is a place where survival shapes every curve of a shell, every twitch of an antenna, every adaptation that keeps life moving forward against impossible odds. And as we leave the sight of these pale scavengers crawling across the sand, their armored legs scraping at the remains of the fallen, another figure emerges in the shadows of the deep. This one does not crawl but spreads its body outward, stretching its limbs into impossible spans. It is the Japanese spider crab, a creature whose legs can reach farther than the height of a man, a reminder that the ocean breeds giants in forms as unsettling as they are awe-inspiring. From the pale armored shapes of giant isopods crawling across the deep seafloor, we now move upward into shallower seas, where a different kind of giant lurks. Unlike the bloated scavengers of the abyss, this creature is not hidden away in eternal night. It lives closer to the light, in waters where divers sometimes wander, and where fishermen know it well. It is the Japanese spider crab, a crustacean so large and so bizarre that it seems to belong to a myth, a creature straddling the line between awe and unease. The Japanese spider crab is not named lightly. Its body itself may be modest in size, but its legs stretch outward like great bridges across the sand. Fully grown, the span from the tip of one claw to the tip of the other can reach up to 12 feet, wider than most people are tall, and longer than the height of many small rooms. To see one in motion is to witness a walking construction of bone and shell, each step carried on limbs that seem impossibly long, bending and extending like the stilts of some ancient mechanical creature. These legs are more than spectacle. In the dim waters of the Pacific around Japan, the spider crab uses its reach to scour the seafloor, scavenging for food scattered across a wide area. It is not a swift hunter. Its body is heavy, its movements slow, but the span of its legs allows it to cover more ground with less effort. Where other crabs must scramble over each patch of sand, the Japanese spider crab can extend its claws like tools, probing crevices, dragging scraps of fish, plants, or carrion back to its waiting mouth. Its design is not built for speed or power, but for patience and reach. Yet this enormous reach also comes at a cost. The crab is slow, far too slow to defend itself from quick predators. It cannot lunge or sprint. Its great size, though intimidating at first glance, would leave it vulnerable were it not for another adaptation. The Japanese spider crab is a master of camouflage. Its shell often grows covered in algae, barnacles, and sponges, turning its body into a living reef. Against the textured seafloor, its shape vanishes, its long legs blending with rocks and corals until it is almost impossible to see. Predators pass by without noticing, and the crab, hidden in plain sight, survives. This balance of scale and stealth is what makes the spider crab so fascinating. Evolution has pushed it towards size, but demanded that it remain cautious, careful, and still. It is not the terrifying aggressor of ocean legends, nor the armored tank of the abyss. Instead, it is a quiet sentinel, moving slowly on its spindly legs, a reminder that even giants must sometimes hide to survive. For divers who encounter them in the waters off Japan, the experience is unforgettable. Imagine swimming through a rocky canyon, the beams of your flashlight cutting through murky green water, only to realize that the shape you thought was part of the seafloor has begun to move. A leg extends, impossibly long, scraping across the sand. Another follows, unfolding with eerie precision. And then, slowly, the entire crab begins to emerge, its full size revealed piece by piece until its span stretches farther than you can reach with both arms. For some, the sight is awe-inspiring, a glimpse into the creativity of nature. For others, it borders on unsettling, a reminder of how alien the ocean's designs can feel. The Japanese spider crab has also become a symbol of endurance. Living for up to a century, it spends decades roaming the same stretches of seafloor, a patient recycler of life and death in the ocean's cycle. Its legs, like bridges, are both a tool and a burden, allowing it to cover vast distances while forcing it to live slowly, carefully, and always under the watch of predators. Here, gigantism takes on a new form. It is not about brute strength, nor about resisting crushing pressure in the abyss. Instead, it is about reach, camouflage, and the ability to live long in a world where time itself becomes an ally. The Japanese spider crab embodies the paradox of the ocean, a creature enormous enough to inspire awe, yet fragile enough to remind us that even giants must walk carefully in the sea. And from the shallows, where legs stretch like bridges, the story of size continues into even stranger territory. For beyond crabs and isopods, there are giants that do not crawl at all, but drift silently through the water, their bodies soft and translucent, their tendrils trailing farther than skyscrapers are tall. From the crab with legs that stretch like bridges, we drift now into a different kind of world, one where giants are not armored in shells or supported by bones, but instead are built of softness, translucence, and fragility. Few creatures capture the paradox of ocean gigantism as completely as the jellyfish, and among them, none more so than the lion's mane jellyfish, a drifting giant whose reach can surpass that of even the whales. Imagine a bell-shaped body, pulsing gently in the water like the slow heartbeat of the sea. From that bell trail, thousands of thin, delicate tentacles, each one alive with stinging cells so small you could not see them with the naked eye, yet powerful enough to paralyze prey. In the lion's mane jellyfish, these tentacles can extend longer than 100 feet, farther than the length of a blue whale, farther even than many skyscrapers are tall. When fully unfurled, they create a curtain of stinging threads, a living net spread across the water column, capable of ensnaring fish, plankton, and almost anything unfortunate enough to drift into its path. Unlike crabs or isopods, the jellyfish does not rely on bones or muscles to support this vastness. Its body is made mostly of water, its tissues soft and pliant. In the crushing depths, where skeletons would buckle and collapse, jellyfish thrive precisely because they have nothing solid to break. Their fragility becomes their strength, a design that allows them to expand to extraordinary sizes without the burden of supporting their own weight. In this way, they embody the strange logic of the ocean, where strength sometimes lies not in hardness, but in yielding. To watch a lion's mane jellyfish is to witness both beauty and menace. Its bell glows with faint colors, sometimes pale red or golden, shimmering like lantern light as it pulses through the current. Its tentacles stream behind it in endless waves, undulating like silk ribbons in a breeze. Yet within this beauty lies danger. Each tentacle is armed with thousands upon thousands of nematocysts, microscopic harpoons that fire on contact, injecting venom into anything that brushes against them. Small fish are paralyzed in moments, their frantic movements silenced as the jellyfish's drifting arms deliver them toward its central mouth. Even humans who encounter these giants are not spared. The sting can leave painful welts and, in rare cases, cause far more serious harm. What makes the jellyfish's size even more remarkable is the efficiency with which it hunts. Unlike whales, which must travel in search of prey, or squid, which must strike with speed and precision, the jellyfish lets the ocean bring food to it. Its tentacles act like fishing lines spread across vast stretches of water, increasing the chance of contact with passing prey. The larger the jellyfish grows, the farther it can extend this reach, creating a drifting trap that covers an astonishing area. Size, for the jellyfish, is not only about intimidation, it is a tool, a passive but highly effective strategy for survival in the open sea. Yet, for all their danger, jellyfish are among the most fragile giants of the ocean. A strong current can tear their tentacles apart. Waves can push their soft bodies to shore, stranding them helplessly on the sand. Their forms, so immense and powerful in the water, can dissolve quickly when removed from it, leaving behind little more than a shimmering trace of what once was. They are giants, but they are also fleeting, as temporary and delicate as the waves that carry them. This fragility only adds to their mystery. How can something so soft dominate so completely? How can a creature with no brain, no bones, and no heart grow to become one of the longest animals on Earth? It is this paradox that makes the jellyfish a perfect symbol of ocean gigantism. In them, we see how the sea rewrites the rules of life, creating creatures that are at once delicate and deadly, immense yet ethereal. As we drift beyond the reach of their trailing tentacles, the ocean reminds us that gigantism is not confined to any one layer of the sea. If the shallows give us crabs with legs like stilts, and the open waters give us drifting jellyfish with tentacles longer than skyscrapers are tall, then the deeper zones hold even greater surprises. In the midnight zone, far beneath the last touch of light, The ocean continues its strange work, shaping creatures into forms even larger, stranger, and more unexpected than the ones we have already seen. The drifting tendrils of the lion's mane jellyfish eventually vanish into the dark, trailing down into depths where no light can follow. Beyond the reach of the sunlight lies a region of the ocean that feels more like an alien world than part of our own planet. It is called the Midnight Zone or the Abyssopelagic Zone, and it is one of the strangest and most secretive habitats on Earth. Here, the ocean is pitch black. No hint of dawn or dusk ever filters through. A permanent night stretches in every direction, broken only by the faint glows of bioluminescent creatures, each spark a private lantern lit in the dark. The pressure is enormous, hundreds of times greater than at the surface, a weight so intense it would crush submarines not built to withstand it. The water is near freezing, and the currents are slow and steady, carrying with them only scraps of food from above. To us, this environment seems impossible, a place where life should fail. And yet, the Midnight Zone is alive, filled with creatures that are larger, stranger, and more resilient than anything we might expect. It is here that the rules of gigantism are written most clearly, where the extreme conditions of the deep have sculpted animals into sizes that astonish the imagination. Amphipods are one of the best examples. In shallow waters, these small crustaceans are barely noticeable, no longer than the nail on your thumb. They scurry under rocks, feeding quietly, almost invisible in their simplicity. But in the Midnight Zone, amphipods transform. They grow to lengths of several inches, swollen far beyond their surface relatives. Some can grow longer than a human hand, their bodies armored and robust, designed to withstand the relentless pressure. In the darkness of the deep, size is not an indulgence, but a necessity, giving them the resilience to endure conditions that would crush smaller, more fragile bodies. Other creatures take gigantism even further. Certain jellyfish and siphonophores stretch their delicate bodies into vast shapes, their forms drifting silently for dozens of feet. Sea cucumbers grow bloated and soft, rolling gently across the sediment as if sculpted by the currents themselves. Even starfish and brittle stars expand into shapes that sprawl across the seafloor, their limbs extending farther than their shallow water cousins could ever achieve. The key to this growth lies in the slow rhythm of the deep. In the Midnight Zone, life moves at a different pace. Metabolism is reduced to a crawl, conserving energy in an environment where food is rare. With such slow energy use, animals can afford to grow large without exhausting themselves. Gigantism here is energy efficient, a way of balancing survival with scarcity. A large body can store energy for long stretches of time, and when food finally drifts down from above, perhaps in the form of plankton, fish remains, or even a fallen whale carcass, these giants can gorge themselves and then endure through months of hunger. This slow pace of life also means longer lifespans. In the stillness of the deep, years pass like quiet breaths, and creatures grow steadily across decades, accumulating size that would be impossible in faster, warmer waters. The Midnight Zone becomes not only a place of survival but a cradle, nurturing giants patiently over time. And always, there is strangeness. The deeper you go, the weirder the forms become. Fish with enormous mouths and needle-like teeth gape into the darkness, their jaws stretched impossibly wide to capture whatever drifts near. Crustaceans with translucent shells glow faintly, their bodies like lanterns carried by the current. Even the amphipods, so simple at the surface, take on an eerie presence in their exaggerated size, their eyes reflecting faint glimmers of bioluminescent light. It is in this darkness that we see the ocean's giant making machine working at full power, every factor converging pressure, cold, scarcity, and time into a recipe for size. Here, gigantism is not an exception but an expectation. The deeper, the weirder, and the larger. And even in these depths, where pressure reigns and silence is absolute, life finds ways to grow not only large, but extraordinary. For hidden among the rocks and chimneys of volcanic vents, the midnight zone offers still another surprise. In places where the earth itself bleeds heat and minerals into the sea, creatures grow to sizes even more astonishing, fueled not by sunlight or drifting food, but by the chemical fire of the planet itself. From the still, black silence of the midnight zone, where pressure and darkness rule, we move deeper into one of the strangest habitats on Earth. Here, the seafloor splits open, releasing streams of boiling, mineral-rich water into the cold abyss. These are hydrothermal vents, places where the inner fire of the planet meets the frozen calm of the deep. To us, they would appear hellish columns of scalding water rising like smokestacks, temperatures shifting from near freezing to hundreds of degrees in the span of a few feet, chemicals clouding the water in thick black plumes. It is an environment where survival seems impossible, and yet, here, the ocean breeds some of its most astonishing giants. Among the shadows of these vents stand the riftia worms, tube-dwelling creatures that grow to lengths of more than 6 feet. Their bodies, encased in long white tubes, rise from the seafloor like strange red-tipped candles. They have no mouths and no stomachs, yet they thrive, nourished by symbiotic bacteria living inside their tissues. These bacteria use the chemicals pouring from the vents, hydrogen sulfide and methane, to produce energy, in much the same way plants use sunlight at the surface. The worms, in turn, provide the bacteria a safe home. It is a partnership that defies expectations. In a place without light, without plants, without photosynthesis, life has found another way to flourish. And in these conditions, it has grown to extraordinary size. Scattered among the worms are giant clams, their shells gaping open to reveal soft tissues glowing with a faint sheen. These clams can grow to more than a foot across, far larger than their shallow water relatives. Like the worms, they also host bacteria inside their bodies, transforming chemical energy into food. Their shells lie in dense clusters around the vents, a colony of giants feeding from the Earth's chemical breath. Closer to the chimneys crawl the vent crabs, stark white in color, their shells gleaming pale against the dark rocks. These crabs scavenge and graze across the mineral surfaces, their claws picking at bacterial mats or bits of organic debris. Though not as massive as whales or squids, they are giants in their own lineage, far larger than crabs in more ordinary waters. They, too, owe their size and survival to the strange alchemy of the vents. The key to all of this gigantism lies in the energy. In most of the ocean, food trickles down from above, the remains of dead plankton, fish, or whales falling like snow into the deep. But around hydrothermal vents, food is produced directly at the seafloor, as bacteria harness chemical energy from the earth itself. For once, the abyss is not starving, it is abundant, and abundance fuels growth. With so much energy available, creatures here can grow larger, reproduce faster, and sustain communities that would be impossible in other parts of the deep. To imagine this place is to imagine an alien landscape. Vast pillars of minerals rise like chimneys, spewing dark clouds of hot water. Around them, clusters of worms, clams, and crabs cover the rocks, their bodies glowing faintly in the dim light of submersibles. The scene is both beautiful and unsettling, a vision of life not dependent on the sunlight, but on the very chemistry of the Earth. Here, in conditions that seem hostile to the extreme, giants cluster together, proving once again that the ocean's creativity knows no limits. The emotional impact of such a sight is difficult to ignore. The vents are chaotic, unstable, and dangerous, yet they are also nurseries of abundance. Even in hellish landscapes, the ocean breeds giants. Where we might expect only emptiness or death, the sea answers with excess, creating creatures that push the boundaries of survival. And as we drift away from the glowing colonies of riftia worms and the clattering shells of giant clams, the story of gigantism stretches back into time itself. For the ocean has not only created giants today, but has done so across ages, filling ancient seas with monsters now long gone. Their fossilized remains whisper that the ocean has always been a factory of giants, and that what we see alive today is only the latest chapter in a story as old as Earth itself. From the living colonies of riftia worms and the pale shells of giant clams clustered around hydrothermal vents, the story of ocean giants does not stop at the present. It stretches backward through deep time into worlds long vanished, leaving behind clues etched in stone. The fossil record reveals that the seas have always been factories of giants, producing creatures of unimaginable size across different ages of Earth's history. What we see alive today is only the latest chapter in a story that began hundreds of millions of years ago. Perhaps the most famous of these ancient giants was Megalodon, the largest shark to ever exist. Growing to lengths of nearly 60 feet, it dwarfed even the great white shark of today, which is less than half that size. Its jaws were wide enough to swallow 2 grown humans side by side, and its teeth, each as large as a human hand, were designed to shear through bone and flesh with terrifying power. Megalodon hunted whales, seals, and other marine mammals, dominating the oceans for millions of years. Fossils of its teeth, often found washed up on beaches, remain as silent reminders of a predator so massive that even the largest sharks of today would have been nothing more than prey in its presence. But sharks were not the only rulers of the seas. Long before Megalodon, in the ancient oceans of the Paleozoic and Mesozoic eras, ammonites thrived. These spiral-shelled cephalopods, related to modern squid and octopuses, grew to sizes that defy imagination. Some ammonites were as large as truck tires, their coiled shells measuring several feet across. They drifted and swam through the seas, using jet propulsion to move, while their tentacles snatched prey from the water. Their intricate shells, now fossilized in stone, reveal patterns of ridges and chambers that once contained air to help them float. For millions of years, they were among the dominant invertebrates of the sea, and their fossils are found across the world, evidence of their incredible abundance and scale. Even further back, in the ancient Silurian and Devonian seas, another kind of giant roamed, the sea scorpion, or Eurypterid. These arthropods looked like enormous armored scorpions, their claws reaching out as they swam through shallow waters. Some species grew longer than humans, stretching more than 6 feet in length. Imagine wading into a prehistoric shoreline and encountering a creature larger than yourself, armored like a crab, and armed with claws capable of dragging prey into its crushing grasp. Sea scorpions were among the top predators of their time, hunting fish and other invertebrates with terrifying efficiency. Though long extinct, their fossils remind us that even hundreds of millions of years ago, the ocean was already producing monsters that seemed to push the limits of possibility. The fossil record is full of such examples, from giant marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs that swam during the age of the dinosaurs, to armored fish called placoderms that reached lengths of 20 feet or more. Each era of Earth's history has its own cast of ocean giants, shaped by the same forces that continue to influence life today: abundance of oxygen, the support of buoyancy, and the opportunities of the open sea. The difference is that in the past, many of these creatures grew to extremes that have since vanished, leaving behind only their bones, shells, and imprints to tell their stories. What unites them all is the reminder that gigantism in the ocean is not a modern accident, nor a rare exception. It is a recurring theme, a pattern that has repeated itself again and again across ages. The ocean seems to favor giants, to sculpt them out of ordinary lineages, whether they are sharks, mollusks, crustaceans, or reptiles. Each time the environment allows, life in the sea answers the same call: grow bigger, grow stranger, grow beyond imagination. And just as these ancient giants once ruled, so too did their time eventually end. Megalodon vanished as oceans cooled, and prey became scarce. Ammonites disappeared in the great extinction that ended the reign of the dinosaurs. Sea scorpions, once lords of shallow waters, gave way to new predators. Yet with each ending, the ocean did not abandon its giants. It created new ones, reshaping life again and again into colossal forms. As we trace these fossils with our fingers, spirals of ammonite shells, jagged triangles of megalodon teeth, the outlines of sea scorpion claws pressed into stone, we are reminded that the ocean has always been an engine of enormity. It has been producing monsters and marvels for hundreds of millions of years, each era leaving behind its silent evidence. And even now, in the living seas, the story continues. While the fossil record shows us that land has always been bound by gravity, the oceans remain free to sculpt life into sizes beyond anything the land has ever allowed. And so, as we rise from the stone memories of giants long gone, we return to the present world of the sea, where the same laws still apply. If land could never match the scale of the whales and squid, it is because gravity locks it into limits. But in the ocean, freed from those limits, gigantism thrives. To understand why the land fell behind and why the sea remains the true cradle of giants, we must now compare the two realms side by side. The fossil record shows us that the oceans have always been factories of giants, but on land, the story unfolded differently. For all the power and majesty of the dinosaurs, the largest creatures to ever walk the earth never reached the scale of the giants that swim in the sea today. Even the greatest of them, the long-necked sauropods, like Argentinosaurus, weighing as much as 100 tons, were still dwarfed by the blue whale. Why did the land giants fall behind, while the sea continued to produce leviathans? The answer lies in the invisible hand of gravity. On land, every pound of weight is borne directly by bone and muscle. Legs must support the entire body, vertebrae must carry the length of the spine, and every joint must withstand the stress of movement. To grow larger means to add more and more strain to a skeleton that can only be built so strong before it begins to collapse under its own weight. Bones are marvels of nature, strong and flexible, but they have limits. No matter how thick or dense they become, they eventually reach a breaking point. The larger the creature, the more energy it must spend just to lift itself, to walk, to breathe. On land, size is always a negotiation with gravity, a tug of war that nature can never fully win. The dinosaurs pushed these limits further than any other land creatures. Argentinosaurus may have stretched more than 100 feet in length, its neck reaching high into treetops, its body like a moving hill across the landscape. Yet even such magnificence had constraints. Every step would have been slow, every breath shallow compared to the effortless glide of a whale. Dinosaurs were enormous, but their skeletons were also cages, limiting how far evolution could push them. The sea is different. In the ocean, water carries much of the body's weight, lifting and distributing mass so that muscles and bones do not have to do all the work. Whales can weigh more than 200 tons because they are buoyed by the very medium they live in. Their skeletons are not forced to hold up their colossal bulk on land, but instead act as frameworks for movement through water, a world where gravity's grip is softened. In the ocean, buoyancy liberates life from the prison of its own mass. On land, bones break, but at sea, giants thrive. The difference is not only physical but also ecological. On land, even the largest animals are tied to the availability of vegetation or prey that can sustain their vast size. Sauropods could only grow so large as long as there were forests dense enough to feed them. Predators like Tyrannosaurus rex, though enormous, were limited by the amount of prey available to support their bulk. On land, every calorie has to be earned, and the effort of moving a giant body consumes much of that energy. In the sea, however, food can often be gathered in abundance. Baleen whales sweep through dense clouds of krill, filtering millions of tiny creatures in a single mouthful. Predators like sperm whales dive into the deep, where colossal squid provide massive, energy-rich meals. The sea not only carries giants, it feeds them in ways the land never could. And then there is movement. On land, the largest creatures move slowly, cautiously, their sheer weight making every action deliberate. In the water, even the largest whale can move with grace, its bulk gliding as if weightless. A flick of the tail propels it forward, a slow roll carries it upward or down, and it can travel thousands of miles across entire oceans without breaking its body. The sea does not punish size in the way gravity does. Instead, it rewards it. This is why the giants of the past, the dinosaurs that once ruled Earth's surface, could never match the whales of today. Land is a world of limits, where bones and muscles are locked in constant struggle with the pull of the earth. The sea is a world of freedom, where weight is shared, where pressure builds strength, and where size itself becomes an advantage. And as we leave the giants of the land behind, the story of gigantism circles back to the ocean, where the very dance between predator and prey continues to shape the scale of life. For in the sea, when prey grows larger, predators must grow larger still, and the arms race of evolution pushes both sides into a spiral of size that has no equal on land. On land, gravity holds life in check, but in the ocean, the story does not end with buoyancy and freedom from weight. Another powerful force drives gigantism, a force as old as life itself, the contest between predator and prey. For every creature that evolves to grow larger, stronger, or better defended, another evolves in response, keeping pace with new weapons and new defenses. This constant back and forth, this arms race, has shaped some of the ocean's most spectacular giants. Consider the relationship between the sperm whale and the colossal squid. The squid, armed with hooks and tentacles, grows larger to resist predation, its massive eyes watching for the shapes of predators in the dark. The whale, in turn, must grow larger to pursue and overpower its quarry. The result is an evolutionary spiral, where size itself becomes the battleground. Whales develop stronger muscles and larger bodies to dive deeper and wrestle their prey into submission, while squids stretch their arms wider, their mass thicker, to hold on long enough to escape. Neither wins completely. Instead, each encounter pushes both lineages to greater extremes. The same pattern is found elsewhere in the sea. Sharks and rays, longtime rivals in the evolutionary game, show it clearly. Rays evolved wide, flat bodies to glide along the seafloor, protected by broad surfaces that made them harder to catch. Sharks, in response, grew larger and faster, their jaws widening to engulf even these broad shapes. The manta ray, the largest of its kind, can span more than 20 feet across, and yet it still lives under the shadow of predators that have evolved alongside it. The ocean's arms race demands escalation, and escalation fuels gigantism. This is the hidden logic of size. A small fish may escape with speed or agility, but as soon as prey begins to grow larger, predators are forced to keep up. A squid that is too big to be swallowed whole must be overpowered instead, which requires a predator strong enough to match it. A ray that grows wide enough to resist one bite must face a predator with jaws large enough to strike again. The cycle never ends. Prey grows, predators grow, and both carry each other upward into the realm of giants. What makes the ocean unique is that it provides the space and the resources for this cycle to continue unchecked. On land, gravity would punish a predator for growing too large. Its bones would strain, its speed would slow, and eventually its prey would outrun it. But in the sea, buoyancy softens the burden. A whale can grow larger than any land animal because the water supports it, allowing size to be an advantage without crippling the body. And once that door is open, the evolutionary arms race takes full advantage, scaling life to levels land could never sustain. The scars on the bodies of sperm whales, left by the desperate grip of colossal squids, are physical proof of this cycle. They show us that each species shapes the other, carving new traits into flesh and bone with every clash. A whale grows larger because the squid demands it, and the squid grows larger because the whale will not stop hunting. This endless dance ensures that giants are not just accidents, but inevitabilities, born from the very logic of survival in the ocean. Even the planktonic world, too small for us to notice, plays by the same rules. Tiny creatures that drift in the currents are eaten by slightly larger ones, which are eaten by larger still. At every stage, predator and prey keep pace, and in some lineages, this pace leads not to small adjustments, but to vast leaps in size. The cycle scales upward until the results become astonishing, giants built by the push and pull of hunger and escape. Evolution, after all, never rests. It does not stop scaling size where the environment allows. Each new challenge is answered with an adaptation, and in the sea, those adaptations often involve growth, longer arms, larger bodies, greater power. And so, the ocean becomes not only a cradle for giants, but a battlefield where size itself is the weapon. From the spiral of predator and prey, we see why the sea is filled with giants, but gigantism does not tell the whole story. While some creatures rise upward into enormous forms, others shrink, choosing a different path entirely. In the same ocean where whales and squid wrestle in the dark, some animals choose to vanish into tininess, relying not on size, but on invisibility. For every giant the ocean creates, there are creatures that choose a different path. While whales swell to unimaginable weights and squids grow arms longer than buses, some animals survive by shrinking, by slipping into the unnoticed shadows of the sea. This is the strange balance of evolution in the ocean. Gigantism may capture our imagination, but dwarfism, staying small, hidden, and almost invisible, is just as powerful a survival strategy. One of the most striking examples is the lanternfish. Despite living in the same vast midwaters that give rise to giants, the lanternfish remains tiny, rarely growing longer than a few inches. Instead of rising into gigantism, it has evolved to remain small, nimble, and unassuming. Its body is dotted with bioluminescent organs that glow faintly in the dark, a camouflage known as counterillumination. By producing light that matches the faint glow from above, lanternfish vanish against the background of the water column, avoiding predators that might otherwise detect them. Their small size is part of the same disguise, making them harder to spot, harder to chase, and easier to hide. This shows us that gigantism is not the only evolutionary answer. In the same environment where some animals grow immense, others shrink, each solving the puzzle of survival in its own way. The lanternfish, though tiny, is one of the most abundant vertebrates on the planet. Vast schools of them fill the oceans, rising toward the surface at night to feed on plankton before sinking back into the darkness during the day. Their smallness is not a weakness, but a strength, allowing them to slip beneath notice while still playing a crucial role in the global ecosystem. Dwarfism often arises in environments where energy is scarce or where being large is not an advantage. For example, in the deep sea, many creatures survive on almost nothing, relying on sparse nutrients drifting down from above. For them, staying small means needing less, conserving energy, and enduring long stretches of hunger. Some fish and invertebrates have remained miniature for millions of years, not because they failed to grow, but because shrinking gave them the better odds. This contrast between giants and dwarfs is one of the most fascinating parts of ocean life. The same pressures, darkness, scarcity, and predation can push species toward opposite extremes. In one lineage, gigantism evolves, producing creatures that rely on size for resilience, storage, or hunting advantage. In another, dwarfism wins, producing creatures that evade predators and conserve energy by remaining small. It is as if the ocean constantly experiments, running parallel strategies side by side, ensuring that life fills every niche, from the massive to the minuscule. Even in predator-prey dynamics, this duality is clear. Some prey, like squid or rays, grow larger to resist predation, forcing their hunters to grow larger in turn. Others, like the lanternfish, vanish into tininess, choosing invisibility over confrontation. Both approaches work, both create survival, and both remind us that evolution is not a straight path, but a branching river with many courses. The existence of dwarfism alongside gigantism keeps the ocean full of mystery. When we imagine the deep, we often picture leviathans, shadows the size of submarines drifting just beyond sight. But just as often, the wonders are small, creatures no larger than a fingernail, glowing like tiny stars in the endless dark. They may never inspire fear the way a colossal squid does, yet they shape the rhythm of the sea in ways just as profound. This contrast is what makes the ocean feel alive with paradox. On one hand, we see forces that encourage size, oxygen-rich waters, buoyancy, pressure, and the arms race between predator and prey. On the other hand, we see the exact same environment producing creatures that shrink, conserving energy, hiding in the shadows, and thriving by being almost invisible. Both extremes speak to the same truth. Survival in the sea has no single formula. And so, the story of gigantism cannot be told without its opposite. The lanternfish, tiny but countless, reminds us that smallness is as much a marvel as size. Together, gigantism and dwarfism create the spectrum of life in the sea, a world where whales and plankton, squids and lanternfish all exist side by side, each adapted to its own corner of survival. As we drift deeper into this paradox, the ocean continues to surprise us with creatures that unsettle our senses. For even among the smallest looking forms, some grow into shapes that terrify those who encounter them. Pale bodies with spindly legs stretch across the seafloor in eerie silence, revealing that dwarfism does not always mean harmlessness. In the cold waters of the Antarctic, sea spiders crawl through the dark, their long limbs spreading wider than dinner plates, reminding us that even when life chooses the path of fragility, it can still produce forms that evoke unease. From the tiny lanternfish that master survival through smallness, we now move to another form that startles the imagination. It is not a giant in the way of whales or colossal squid, yet its appearance unsettles even seasoned divers. In the icy waters of the Antarctic, crawling slowly across the seafloor, lives the Antarctic sea spider, a creature that looks less like an animal of Earth and more like something born of another world. At first glance, the sea spider seems delicate, almost fragile. Its body is thin, barely more than a narrow stalk, while its legs stretch outward into spindly extensions that rival the size of dinner plates. Unlike crabs or lobsters, which carry thick shells and heavy claws, the Antarctic sea spider seems to be made almost entirely of legs, as though its body has melted away and left only its frame behind. Its slow, deliberate crawl across the seafloor adds to its eerie presence, a movement that feels more spectral than animal. Yet these sea spiders thrive in one of the harshest environments on the planet. The Antarctic waters are cold, often just a degree or two above freezing, and they are rich in dissolved oxygen. This abundance of oxygen, combined with the slowing of metabolism in frigid seas, creates the perfect conditions for these creatures to grow much larger than their relatives elsewhere. In warmer waters, sea spiders are small and often overlooked. In the Antarctic, however, they swell into giants, their leg spans stretching far wider, their bodies more elongated, their presence unmistakable. The way they survive only deepens their strangeness. Sea spiders do not have lungs or gills. Instead, they rely on diffusion, absorbing oxygen directly through their thin exoskeletons. Their bodies are so small and their legs so long that much of their circulation occurs within those limbs, where blood-like fluids move nutrients and oxygen across their entire frame. It is an arrangement that seems alien to us, as though they were built on a design that defies the rules we expect of living things. Divers who encounter them in the Antarctic often describe an unsettling feeling. Imagine floating above a barren, icy seafloor, the silence broken only by the crackle of distant ice, when suddenly a pale, spindly figure emerges from the rocks below. Its legs, impossibly long compared to its tiny body, move with slow precision. It does not hurry, it does not flinch, it simply crawls with the quiet patience of something that has existed in these waters for millions of years. In the glow of a diver's light, it looks more like a creature from a nightmare than a living arthropod, its proportions so skewed from our expectations that it seems almost unreal. For some, the terror lies in its appearance. It is not large enough to threaten a human, yet its form unsettles the imagination. The spidery limbs, the almost absent body, the pale ghost-like coloring, all combine into something that feels unnatural, even though it is perfectly adapted to its home. It is a reminder that extremes always produce extremes. In the Antarctic, where conditions are unlike anywhere else, life itself bends into shapes that appear uncanny, and in that bending, giants are born even among creatures we might expect to remain small. The Antarctic sea spider proves that gigantism does not always result in creatures that inspire awe or majesty. Sometimes it results in beings that evoke discomfort, that unsettle rather than amaze. Yet they, too, are products of the same forces: oxygen-rich water, cold temperatures, and the slow ticking of time that create the whales and squids we admire. The sea spider's horror is not in its danger but in its design, a reminder of how far the ocean's imagination can stretch. As we leave these spindly giants crawling across the Antarctic floor, the story of human encounters with ocean giants waits ahead. While many of these creatures live hidden in the dark, far beyond our reach, there have been moments when fishermen, sailors, and divers have met them face to face. Those encounters, filled with awe and sometimes fear, remind us that these giants are not just myths whispered in stories. They are real, and they still swim beneath the waves today. From the unsettling, spindly legs of Antarctic sea spiders, we rise back into the realm where human stories and ocean mysteries meet. For all our technology and knowledge, many of the giants of the sea remain hidden from us, their lives unfolding in darkness far below. Yet every so often, humans glimpse them: a fisherman hauling up nets, a sailor staring into the waves, a submersible brushing against a vast shadow in the deep. These moments are rare, fleeting, but unforgettable. They remind us that the giants of the ocean are not only creatures of myth or fossil, but living beings that still drift, swim, and battle in the waters of our own time. Perhaps the most striking encounters are with the colossal squid. For centuries, sailors told of monstrous tentacled beasts, stories that grew into the legend of the kraken. Many dismissed these tales as exaggeration or fantasy until, in the modern age, fishermen began to haul up proof from the depths. Nets straining with unexpected weight surfaced with massive squids, their tentacles lined with sharp hooks, their eyes as wide as dinner plates, staring lifelessly at the world above. These were not stories, they were real. Some specimens measured over 40 feet long, their arms so heavy that it took several men to lift them. The awe was mingled with dread. To know that such a creature swims in the abyss, unseen and silent, is to realize how small we are in comparison. Even more chilling are the scars found on sperm whales, proof of battles fought in the deep. Fishermen pulling a whale to the surface often discover its skin crisscrossed with circular marks, wounds left by the claws and hooks of colossal squids. These scars are not imagined. They are physical evidence that titanic struggles occur in the dark, battles between giants so large that they dwarf our greatest predators on land. When humans witness even a fragment of these creatures, we are reminded that legends were never empty. They were echoes of truths too large to ignore. Modern technology has also given us glimpses. Submarines and remotely operated vehicles have filmed giant squid alive in their natural habitat, their pale bodies flashing through beams of artificial light, their arms undulating in eerie silence. For those inside the submarines, the experience is unforgettable. Imagine sitting in a small metal capsule, surrounded by glass, thousands of feet under the sea, when suddenly a vast shape passes by. At first, you see only movement, a shadow, a blur. Then, as it turns, you realize that it is alive, larger than the submersible itself, and that you are staring into the unblinking eye of a leviathan. It is a moment of awe, but also of fear, for no matter how safe the glass feels, the ocean outside is immeasurably vast, and you are but a guest within it. Even without submarines, sailors and travelers at sea have told of encounters with giants, a whale surfacing beside a ship, its back rising like an island from the waves, a manta ray gliding below, its shadow so vast that it blocks out the sunlit shimmer of the water, sharks longer than small boats, gliding with slow confidence, their sheer scale enough to silence entire crews. These encounters strike at something primal within us, an ancient memory of awe and humility before the ocean. For all our knowledge, we must remind ourselves that these creatures are alive today. They are not relics of prehistory, but fellow travelers on this planet, moving through ecosystems that are still largely unexplored. Every giant squid hauled to the surface, every whale scarred from battle, every enormous shadow glimpsed by a diver is proof that the ocean continues to hold mysteries far larger than we are prepared to imagine. And from these encounters, a question lingers. If these are the giants we have seen, however rarely, what of the ones we have not? The ocean's trenches and shadowed plains remain almost untouched, waiting. If battles between whales and squid can rage unseen, what else, larger still, might be lurking in the abyss, moving silently through waters we have yet to explore? The fishermen who glimpse colossal squid, the submarines that brush against living shadows, all remind us that giants walk the seas today. But size is not only about battles, or buoyancy, or the strange rules of pressure. Sometimes, gigantism is born not from sudden growth, but from the quiet patience of time itself. The larger an animal is, the longer it often lives, and the longer it lives, the greater its chance to reach sizes that seem almost impossible to us. Longevity, in its own way, becomes another path to gigantism. Consider the Greenland shark, a creature that drifts slowly through the icy waters of the North Atlantic. Its body moves at a pace so unhurried that it seems to exist outside of time itself. Scientists studying these sharks have discovered that they can live for centuries. Some individuals may reach an age of 400 years, making them the longest living vertebrates known to science. Imagine that sharks born in the 17th century, before telescopes had even revealed the moons of Jupiter, still alive today, gliding silently beneath the Arctic ice. Their size, often over 20 feet long, is not the result of rapid growth, but of centuries of steady, patient increase. Longevity offers a different strategy for survival. In the cold, oxygen-rich waters where Greenland sharks dwell, their metabolism slows to a crawl. Each heartbeat is drawn out, each breath measured, each movement minimal. With so little energy spent, their bodies grow slowly but steadily across centuries, accumulating size over time in a way that faster-living animals never can. In these conditions, time itself becomes an ally, stretching life into spans that seem almost eternal. The result is not only endurance but enormity. This pattern is not unique to sharks. Across the ocean, many of the largest creatures also live the longest lives. Whales, enormous in scale, often live for more than a century, their bodies aging slowly as they cross the globe. Giant clams, anchored to reefs, can survive for as long as 200 years, their shells expanding year after year until they reach weights of several hundred pounds. Even the bowhead whale, which lives in the frigid Arctic seas, has been known to live for more than 2 centuries, its body growing vast across generations of ice and thaw. What unites them is the way longevity feeds gigantism. To grow large requires not only energy and environment but time. Each year adds another layer, another inch, another pound, until the body itself reflects the patience of survival. Creatures that live long enough simply have more opportunity to grow beyond what seems possible. This is why the largest often overlap with the oldest, as though time itself were shaping them into giants. There is something deeply emotional about this thought. To imagine a Greenland shark swimming beneath the ice, its eyes clouded with centuries of stories, is to realize that we live alongside creatures that are older than our history. They are monuments of the ocean, not built of stone but of flesh and blood, their vastness a testament to the endurance of life. Their slow growth and great age remind us that gigantism is not always the result of fierce competition or sudden abundance. Sometimes it is simply the accumulation of centuries, life stretched so long that size becomes inevitable. And so, gigantism and longevity are intertwined. Each feeds the other. Larger animals often survive longer because their size protects them, deterring predators and allowing them to endure. Longer lives, in turn, give them the chance to become larger, to carry their bulk through centuries of survival. It is a cycle that shapes some of the most extraordinary creatures in the sea, those that astonish us, not only with their immensity, but with the sheer span of their lives. As we follow these long-lived giants through the depths, another question rises: how does size affect the future of life itself? For beyond survival and growth lies the question of reproduction. To pass on their immense bodies, their slow patience, their strategies for life, the giants must create the next generation. And in the ocean, even reproduction bends beneath the weight of gigantism, shaping the ways creatures spawn, breed, and carry their lineages forward into the future. The Greenland shark drifting through centuries, and the bowhead whale carrying its bulk across generations remind us that longevity and size are deeply connected. Yet to continue their story, another element must be added, one that links the past to the future. For every giant alive today is also a parent, carrying forward its lineage into the next age. Reproduction, the quiet but powerful act of life's renewal, is deeply shaped by size. The ocean not only allows creatures to grow immense, it rewards them by making their largeness a tool for survival through their offspring. In the vastness of the sea, where predators lurk at every level, the challenge of reproduction is daunting. Eggs and larvae are among the most vulnerable stages of life, fragile and often defenseless. For smaller animals, the strategy is usually quantity. They scatter countless eggs, filling the water with millions of tiny chances, each one unlikely to survive, but made possible by sheer numbers. Larger animals, however, can take this strategy to extremes. The giant squid, for instance, lays millions of eggs in a single spawning event, each one encased in protective jelly-like masses that drift through the currents. The female's enormous body makes this possible, storing and releasing an abundance of potential lives at once. Most of those eggs will be eaten, some by fish, others by planktonic predators, but in such vast numbers, enough will survive to carry the species forward. Here, size becomes the foundation of success, a guarantee that even in the ruthless ocean, survival is possible through overwhelming numbers. Other giants take a different path, one made possible by their bulk and strength. Whales, for instance, produce far fewer offspring than squid, but each calf is enormous at birth, already weighing tons and measuring longer than the length of many small boats. The mother's massive body provides not only protection during pregnancy, but also the ability to nurse her young with rich, fat-filled milk. This investment is only possible because of her size, the stored energy reserves and strength that allow her to sustain another immense body alongside her own. In this way, size ensures not just the survival of the mother, but also the survival of the child. A smaller body could never provide such an investment. Even among invertebrates, this pattern repeats. Giant clams, anchored on coral reefs, release clouds of gametes into the water, their vast size allowing them to flood the sea with chances for new life. Crabs of unusual size produce broods that stretch into the thousands, carrying their fertilized eggs beneath their wide shells until the young are ready to hatch. The larger the body, the greater the capacity to carry, to protect, and to provide. The ocean's giants, whether squid, clams, or whales, all turn their size into a reproductive advantage, ensuring that their lineages remain strong even in the face of constant danger. The connection between body size and reproduction also extends to energy. Larger creatures can store more fat, more nutrients, more reserves to draw from, when the act of reproduction demands it. For a whale migrating thousands of miles to breeding grounds, its immense size provides the energy needed to make the journey without feeding. For a squid releasing millions of eggs at once, the vast reserves within its body fuel the effort. Without size, such reproductive feats would be impossible. And so, gigantism becomes more than a strategy for surviving pressure, scarcity, or predation. It becomes a way of ensuring the future. Larger bodies create larger opportunities for reproduction, greater investment in each generation, and more resilience against the losses that come with ocean life. Through size, the giants of the sea extend their reach not only in space but in time, securing the next chapter of their species. Yet for all the successes that size brings, there remains another mystery. If gigantism makes life more secure, why do we still encounter creatures that exceed even our expectations? Why do sonar maps sometimes reveal shadows larger than anything we know? Why do fishermen's tales still speak of monsters never captured or recorded? If size is survival, then perhaps the ocean still holds giants beyond what we have yet discovered. The giants we know, the blue whales, the colossal squids, the Greenland sharks, already stretch the imagination to its limits. Yet even these may not represent the full story of size in the sea. For every whale sighted at the surface, for every squid hauled up by fishermen, for every shark tagged by scientists, there are still countless others hidden beyond our reach. The ocean is vast beyond comprehension, with more than 80% of it unexplored. In its deepest trenches, its shadowed plains, its mountain-like ridges, there may still be giants that have never been recorded, creatures that move silently in worlds we have yet to touch. The thought alone is enough to stir both awe and unease. Some of the deepest points of the sea, like the Mariana Trench, plunge more than 35,000 feet below the surface. That is deeper than the height of Mount Everest if it were turned upside down. Within those black, crushing depths, conditions are unlike anything we experience on land. Pressure builds to levels so immense that the very chemistry of life shifts, forcing biology to rewrite itself. Light never reaches, and food drifts down in unpredictable pulses. If gigantism thrives in such extremes, then what might be waiting in those unseen places? Could colossal squids grow even larger in the black abyss, stretching longer than the ones we have measured? Could there be leviathans unknown to science, drifting through trenches that have never been mapped by human eyes? Hints come to us in strange and fleeting ways. Sonar, the method by which ships map the ocean floor and track creatures moving through the water column, sometimes detects shadows larger than anything we can explain. Vast shapes appear, lingering in the depths, only to vanish again before they can be confirmed. Some are dismissed as schools of fish, others as sonar errors, but not all. Occasionally, the echoes suggest something far larger, something alive, a body wider or longer than the whales we know. These shadows are frustrating and tantalizing, reminding us of how much we do not yet understand. Fishermen, too, add to this mystery. Across generations, sailors have told of encounters with creatures that strain belief. Nets pulled from the sea with torn ropes, as though something too large to hold had passed through them. Shadows moving beneath boats at night, long enough to blot out the moon's reflection on the water. Tentacles brushing against hulls, leaving behind sucker marks as wide as dinner plates, or larger still. Most of these tales never make it into scientific reports, but they persist in the oral traditions of fishing communities. They are stories told quietly, not to boast, but to pass on the unsettling truth that the sea sometimes reveals itself in glimpses, and that not all of its giants have yet been named. And then there are the mysteries of stranded carcasses, what scientists sometimes call globsters, massive, unidentifiable remains washed onto shore, their flesh too decayed to identify clearly, their proportions strange enough to inspire speculation. Some have later been explained as decomposing whales or sharks. Others remain unresolved, fragments of something once alive but no longer recognizable, a whisper of the possibility that the sea hides forms larger than those we have catalogued. The open question lingers. What if the biggest are still undiscovered? What if the whales we revere as the largest animals in Earth's history are not alone at the top? Could there be squid larger than buses, drifting unseen in trenches where no light shines? Could there be predators bigger than megalodon, surviving in pockets of the sea, untouched by modern exploration? The absence of proof is not proof of absence, and with so much of the ocean still uncharted, the possibility remains alive. The mystery of hidden giants pulls us onward, not into fear, but into curiosity. It reminds us that discovery is still possible, that the ocean remains a frontier not yet conquered. And as science pushes deeper, sending submarines, cameras, and sensors into the dark, we may one day learn that the creatures we once dismissed as myth were not exaggerations at all. Perhaps the legends of leviathans, of kraken and sea serpents, were not merely stories, but memories of real encounters with beings so large they defied belief. And so we continue, drawn deeper by the question of what lies beyond sight, into the realm where exploration turns speculation into reality. For even now, modern expeditions are venturing into the depths, their machines capturing images and sounds that shift the boundaries of what we thought possible. Each journey reveals something new, something stranger, a reminder that the story of ocean gigantism is still being written. The whispers of hidden giants, the sonar shadows and fishermen's tales, all beckon us deeper. For centuries, these stories remained only that rumors, legends, half-believed accounts passed from sailor to sailor, but in recent decades, our machines have begun to venture where human bodies cannot. Remote-operated vehicles, or ROVs, and manned submersibles have descended into the black abyss, their lights piercing the eternal night, their cameras capturing scenes that once belonged only to myth. Slowly, the ocean has begun to show us glimpses of its secrets, and each discovery shifts the boundaries of what we thought possible. One of the most remarkable moments came when scientists finally filmed a colossal squid alive in its natural habitat. For years, only carcasses hauled from the deep had hinted at its existence, and many doubted whether such a creature could truly be real. But in the early years of this century, a Japanese research team lowered a camera rig thousands of feet beneath the waves, baited with fish to draw predators. What returned was astonishing. A pale, enormous figure drifting into the frame, its tentacles gliding with an eerie grace, its enormous eye glowing faintly in the artificial light. For the first time in human history, we saw the kraken not as a legend, but as a living creature, alive and moving in the dark. The moment was not just scientific, it was emotional. It was as if a doorway had opened between centuries of myth and the truth of biology. And this was not an isolated case. Every decade of exploration brings new revelations. ROVs descending along undersea cliffs have recorded jellyfish with bells wider than a human is tall, their translucent bodies glowing in colors that shimmer like lanterns. Submersibles have discovered massive siphonophores, colonial organisms composed of countless smaller units that can stretch longer than a blue whale, curling and drifting through the black water like glowing threads spun by the sea itself. Each time a camera turns, something strange, immense, and unexpected comes into view, as though the ocean were reminding us that it still holds dominion over mystery. These expeditions reveal not only individual giants, but also entire ecosystems of abundance. Around hydrothermal vents, ROVs have captured footage of towering tube worms, giant clams, and crab swarms clustering in impossible numbers, all thriving in landscapes that seem too extreme to support life at all. Submarines exploring the midnight zone have found amphipods the size of human hands, their bodies scuttling across the seafloor in places once thought barren. Each new descent confirms what legends always suggested, that the ocean is far more alive, far more immense than we dared to imagine. What makes these discoveries even more striking is how they reveal science chasing after legend. Sailors once spoke of glowing monsters, and now we record bioluminescent giants lighting their own paths through the deep. Fishermen told of nets destroyed by creatures too large to hold, and now we see colossal squid alive, their hooked tentacles spiraling outward like weapons. What was once dismissed as exaggeration is often revealed as understatement. Reality, it seems, does not shrink the myth, but expands it. For the scientists who descend in these submersibles, the experience is deeply humbling. Imagine sitting inside a small capsule of metal and glass, thousands of feet beneath the waves, when a shadow larger than your entire vessel drifts into view. The lights reveal not emptiness, but eyes, arms, fins, or wings of translucent tissue spreading outward into the dark. In those moments, fear and wonder mix together, reminding us that for all our instruments and knowledge, we are still explorers in a world that does not belong to us. The sea grants glimpses, but never fully reveals itself. And every glimpse opens new questions. If we can film a colossal squid today, what will we capture tomorrow? If siphonophores longer than whales exist, what other shapes might drift even deeper? Each decade pushes the boundary farther, turning yesterday's legend into today's specimen, while also creating new mysteries for tomorrow. Science moves forward, but the ocean always stays a step ahead, keeping its greatest giants hidden for another generation. From these expeditions, we begin to see a pattern. Gigantism is not rare but recurring. Again and again, the ocean produces vast forms, sometimes fragile and glowing, sometimes armored and monstrous, sometimes so strange that they defy description altogether. And the deeper we go, the more frequently we find them. It is as though the sea itself insists on reminding us that size is one of its favorite experiments, repeated endlessly across time and species. And yet, these discoveries are only the beginning. They show us that gigantism is not a quirk of one lineage or one age, but a recurring pattern written into the very logic of the ocean. To understand why this happens again and again across squid, whales, jellyfish, and clams, we must look deeper into the science of evolution itself. For gigantism does not emerge by accident, it is the result of convergent solutions, the same problem solved the same way by many different kinds of life. The footage from modern expeditions shows us something remarkable. Giants do not appear in the ocean as isolated oddities, nor as rare accidents of biology. They appear again and again in lineages that are completely unrelated, as though the sea itself were leaning toward scale. This is the story of convergent evolution, when different creatures, separated by millions of years and vast genetic distances, solve survival in the same way. Again and again, the ocean chooses size. Take cephalopods, for example. Squid and octopuses are soft-bodied creatures, lacking bones or shells, yet they have produced some of the largest invertebrates alive today. The colossal squid, with its dinner plate eyes and hooked tentacles, and the giant squid, with arms that can stretch longer than buses, are proof that even without skeletons, The sea pushes them toward enormity. Their ancestors, ammonites and belemnites, followed the same path hundreds of millions of years ago, filling the seas with shells as large as truck tires. Across time, across design, cephalopods have leaned into gigantism. Crustaceans, too, have answered this call. From the pill-sized isopods we know on land, their deep-sea relatives grow to the size of footballs. The Japanese spider crab extends its legs more than 12 feet across, spanning wider than a man is tall. These giants are not related to squid, and yet the same pressures have led them upward in scale, sculpting them into behemoths of their own. The pattern repeats, not once, but many times. Jellyfish provide another example. Soft, gelatinous, and fragile, one might expect them to remain small. Yet, the lion's mane jellyfish, with tentacles that can extend over 100 feet, is among the longest animals alive. Siphonophores, delicate colonial organisms, stretch even farther, sometimes longer than blue whales. Their bodies are simple, their tissues thin, yet evolution still drives them into immensity. Even the most delicate life finds scale in the sea. And then, of course, there are mammals. Whales began as land animals, small hoofed creatures that returned to the water tens of millions of years ago. Once back in the sea, they grew and grew until they became the largest animals ever known in Earth's history. The blue whale, weighing more than 200 tons, is a pinnacle of this pattern, a living monument to the sea's encouragement of size. From tiny land mammal to the heaviest creature to ever live, the path of the whale shows how the ocean lifts creatures into gigantism with a kind of inevitability. This is what makes convergent evolution so powerful. Different lineages, separated by time and form cephalopods, crustaceans, jellyfish, mammals all arriving at the same solution: size. It is not random, it is not coincidence, it is the result of an environment that favors largeness again and again. The cold, the pressure, the abundance of oxygen, the freedom from gravity, and the arms race between predators and prey all tilt the scales in the same direction. The ocean is biased toward gigantism. On land, convergent evolution also occurs, but it rarely leads to giants. Wings have evolved in insects, birds, and bats. Eyes have evolved in dozens of lineages. But size, true monumental size, is kept in check by gravity and scarcity. Only in the ocean does the same script replay endlessly across unrelated families, producing squids longer than buses, jellyfish longer than skyscrapers are tall, whales heavier than dinosaurs, and crabs with legs that span the width of a car. The sea takes the blueprint of life and redraws it on a larger scale. This pattern tells us something profound about evolution itself. It is not simply random mutations shuffled endlessly, producing whatever chance allows. It is guided, not by intention, but by environment. Where the rules permit, where the conditions favor, evolution flows down the same pathways again and again. In the ocean, those pathways lead toward giants. It is less a coincidence and more a bias, a tendency written into the physics and chemistry of the deep. And yet, not all giants are alike. Some, like jellyfish, are fragile and translucent, their size giving them reach, but not protection. Others, like isopods, are armored and heavy, their bulk a shield against predators and pressure alike. This paradox of fragility alongside strength, of delicate giants beside armored monsters, reveals another layer of the mystery. For even within the ocean's bias toward gigantism, evolution produces extremes that seem contradictory, leaving us to wonder why size sometimes coexists with weakness instead of strength. The ocean rewards size in ways the land never can, and through convergent evolution, it has created giants across many lineages. Yet size in the sea does not always follow the same rules. Some giants are armored, built of dense shells and plated bodies that resist attack. Others, however, are almost ghost-like, so delicate that they seem to have no defenses at all. This is the paradox of fragile giants, how creatures with soft, jelly-like bodies can grow to sizes that dwarf nearly everything else in the ocean, while their sturdier neighbors evolve bulk and armor. Fragility and gigantism, side by side, both finding a way to survive. The lion's mane jellyfish is one of the clearest examples. Its bell, the dome-like body that pulses to move it through the water, may be only a few feet across, but its tentacles can stretch more than 100 feet in length, making it one of the longest creatures alive. Each tentacle is as thin as silk and as fragile as tissue, yet together they form a living curtain that drifts through the sea. Fish that wander into this forest of stinging filaments can be paralyzed in moments, wrapped and drawn into the jellyfish's waiting mouth. Its strength is not in armor, not in muscle, but in scale and delicacy combined. Its body is so simple, so transparent, and yet its sheer size makes it a formidable presence. By contrast, on the seafloor, we find giants of an entirely different design. The giant isopod, with its thick, segmented shell and overlapping plates, looks more like an armored machine than a living creature. These oversized relatives of the pillbug can grow nearly 2 feet long, their heavy bodies creeping slowly across the abyss in search of food. Their bulk protects them from predators, their shells acting as shields against both attack and the crushing pressure of the deep. They embody resilience, everything about their design built for endurance, and yet they are far smaller than the fragile jellyfish floating high above them. The paradox sharpens. Why does one giant build walls, while the other spreads into fragile flowing threads? The answer lies partly in the environments they occupy. In the open water, where escape routes are infinite and predators can approach from every side, soft-bodied creatures can survive by outgrowing their hunters. Few predators are able to consume something as vast and sprawling as a giant jellyfish. The stings of its tentacles make it even more dangerous, a floating fortress of pain disguised as fragility. On the seafloor, however, predators are closer, food is scarce, and the risks are different. There, resilience is often the better option, and armored giants like isopods survive by being too difficult to attack. Still, the mystery remains. Why would evolution allow fragility to persist alongside strength? In many environments, weakness is weeded out, replaced by traits that defend or protect, but in the ocean, fragility sometimes becomes a kind of strength. Jellyfish, siphonophores, and salps all show us that transparency and delicacy can succeed when paired with size. Their bodies collapse easily, but collapse does not matter when predators cannot swallow them whole. Their very flimsiness makes them energy efficient, their size makes them unmanageable as prey, and their simple structures allow them to thrive where others cannot. This coexistence of fragile giants and armored giants highlights the ocean's strange balance. It does not favor one path exclusively. Instead, it allows extremes to flourish side by side. The giant isopod, with its plated shell, creeps heavily across the bottom. The jellyfish, with its flowing filaments, drifts above. Both are enormous, both are successful, and yet they could not be more different in form. Evolution in the ocean is not about one perfect design, but about many designs that work, even if they contradict each other. There is something haunting about this paradox. It reveals the ocean's willingness to bend the rules of survival, to create giants not only from strength but from fragility. It shows us that size can be both armor and illusion, that delicacy itself can be magnified into a weapon, and it leaves us with a question that unsettles as much as it amazes. If evolution allows such extremes, what other shapes might gigantism take that we have yet to discover? As we wonder at this paradox, we return to the broader lessons that gigantism teaches us. These giants, whether armored or fragile, remind us that the ocean is not a place of limits, but of experiments, a laboratory that tests the boundaries of biology again and again. And in those experiments, gigantism becomes more than just survival. It becomes a message about adaptability, resilience, and the strange beauty of life at its largest scales. The paradox of fragile giants, jellyfish with bodies like glass and isopods wrapped in armor, reveals how the ocean permits extremes to flourish side by side. Yet beneath all these variations runs a deeper truth. Gigantism itself is not a single explanation, but a collection of lessons about survival. Each giant of the sea is a kind of answer, an evolutionary solution to challenges that might otherwise seem impossible. To study them is to watch nature experiment at scales so vast that they defy imagination. The ocean has always been the greatest laboratory for life. Its waters are vast, its environments extreme, and its opportunities endless. Within it, creatures face pressures of cold darkness, scarcity, and predators lurking from every angle. Yet again and again, the answer has been size. Whales stretching longer than any land creature could bear, squids with eyes wider than a dinner plate, jellyfish with tentacles longer than skyscrapers are tall. Gigantism shows us that life will test every boundary, probing the limits of physics and physiology, and sometimes finding a way to expand beyond them. One of the most striking lessons of gigantism is adaptability. It is easy to imagine that evolution is conservative, working within narrow lines, but giants show us that adaptation is bolder than we think. The colossal squid grows immense, not to dominate the seas, but to survive within them, its size helping it resist predators and endure the abyss. The blue whale grows vast, not by hunting larger prey, but by filtering billions of tiny krill. These solutions are opposite in method, yet united in outcome. Both show that gigantism is not about arrogance or display, but about function, a practical adaptation molded to the demands of an environment. Another lesson is that gigantism is not limited to one kind of body. Fragile siphonophores can stretch to lengths greater than any whale, while armored crustaceans creep slowly across the seafloor with their shells as shields. Even creatures with no skeletons, no bones, and little more than tissue can achieve scale by leaning on their environment, using buoyancy, water pressure, and chemical balance to sustain forms that would collapse on land. This tells us that life is endlessly inventive. It is not the material of the body that matters, but the creativity of adaptation, the way evolution turns limitations into opportunity. At its heart, gigantism is also a lesson in survival against odds. When food is scarce, some creatures grow large enough to store energy for long stretches without eating. When predators threaten, others grow too big to swallow. In icy polar seas, creatures swell in size because cold water carries more oxygen, allowing their bodies to fuel greater mass. Each giant is a response to an obstacle, a testament to the way life persists in conditions that seem unbearable. When we look at these immense forms, we are not only seeing size, we are seeing resilience carved into flesh, scale as a story of persistence, and perhaps the greatest lesson lies in the awe they inspire. Giants remind us that evolution is not a quiet process of small adjustments alone. It is also capable of spectacular leaps, experiments carried out at monumental scale. To see a whale breach is to see nature's ambition in motion. To glimpse the pale, undulating arms of a giant squid is to witness a mystery made flesh. To imagine a shark living for centuries, growing foot by foot across 400 years, is to sense time itself shaping a giant. These are not just creatures, they are demonstrations of what life can do when given space, time, and the strange encouragement of the sea. Gigantism, then, is more than a curiosity. It is a story written in bodies that dwarf our understanding, a record of adaptability, survival, and resilience. Each giant is an evolutionary experiment, a reminder that the ocean does not settle for what is possible, but always presses against what seems impossible. And as we reflect on these experiments at scale, another question rises. If gigantism can stretch so far already, could it go farther still? Have we truly seen the ceiling of size, or is the ocean still preparing to reveal creatures greater than any we have yet imagined? The giants of today already defy imagination. Whales heavier than dinosaurs, squid with eyes the size of dinner plates, jellyfish with tentacles longer than skyscrapers are tall. Each of them is living proof that the ocean bends the limits of life. And yet, as we gaze upon these enormous beings, a question stirs quietly in the background. Have we already reached the peak of size, or could even larger creatures one day emerge from the deep? The truth is that no physical law forbids life from growing bigger than whales. Physics and biology impose constraints, yes, but they do not draw an absolute line in the sand. Whales are immense because the buoyancy of water carries their weight, freeing them from the crushing demands of gravity that limit size on land. If enough food is available to support it, if oxygen flows through tissues in abundance, and if conditions remain stable for long enough, there is no reason another creature could not one day surpass even the largest whale. The sea still holds the potential for bodies larger than anything we have yet witnessed. Energy is the great limiter of size. A creature must consume enough to fuel every heartbeat, every movement of muscle, every repair to cells, stretched across enormous frames. For the blue whale, this balance is found in the smallest of prey. By feasting on billions of krill, whales tap into a food source abundant enough to sustain their incredible mass. This shows us that size is not only about biology, but about the architecture of ecosystems. If the oceans were to shift in a way that created even more abundant prey, such as swarms of plankton or krill, larger and denser than today, then evolution could favor creatures even bigger than the whales we know. The foundations for gigantism lie as much in the base of the food web as in the body of the giant itself. Oxygen, too, plays a crucial role. During Earth's prehistoric past, atmospheric oxygen levels were higher than they are now, and this allowed insects on land to grow larger than their modern relatives. In the oceans, the availability of oxygen-rich waters still shapes size today. Cold polar regions, where oxygen dissolves most easily, are home to oversized sea spiders, isopods, and other strange creatures that swell far beyond the dimensions of their warmer water cousins. If the ocean's chemistry were to shift, if oxygen became more plentiful across vast ranges, then the stage might again be set for new giants to rise. The rules of biology are flexible when environments change, and the future may invite forms we can scarcely imagine now. Time is another factor. Giants do not appear overnight. They are sculpted slowly, generation by generation, over millions of years. The whale that exists today is the descendant of small, hoofed land mammals that once lived in rivers and swamps. Over eons, They returned to the sea and grew larger and larger, shaped by food availability and freedom from gravity. If this happened once, it can happen again. Some lineage, perhaps small and unassuming today, may drift into conditions that favor enlargement, until one day its descendants rival or even surpass the blue whale. It is not only the past that feeds this question, but also the mysteries that still surround us. Sonar shadows larger than whales have been recorded, only to vanish before they can be confirmed. Fishermen tell of nets torn by creatures too massive to haul in. Carcasses wash ashore so decayed they defy classification, raising whispers of giants we do not yet know. These are not proofs, but they remind us that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. If the ocean has always bred giants, it may not yet have finished. There is an emotional power in wondering whether evolution still holds such surprises. To think that somewhere in the black waters of the abyss, an animal larger than any whale could drift unseen fills us with both awe and unease. Have we seen the ceiling of size, or are today's giants merely stepping stones towards something greater? Could there be behemoths forming even now, hidden in the currents, awaiting a future when they will dominate the seas as whales do today? The ocean has never ceased to surprise us. It has revealed forms stranger than fiction, lives that span centuries, and creatures larger than our myths could contain. It is not unreasonable to imagine that it may yet show us more. And as we wonder at the possibility of future giants, we are reminded that these immense forms are not only curiosities, but also reflections of Earth itself. For to understand why giants exist and why they may emerge again, we must see them as mirrors of the planet, shaped by its climate, chemistry, and history. The question of whether even larger creatures could still emerge leads us naturally to something deeper. For gigantism is not just about size, it is a mirror held up to our planet, reflecting its chemistry, its history, and its shifting conditions over time. Each giant that roams the sea is not only a marvel of evolution, but also a clue, a living record of the forces that shape life on Earth. To understand why whales reach such mass, why squid grow to monstrous proportions, or why jellyfish stretch across lengths greater than skyscrapers, is to glimpse the rules by which our world itself operates. The oceans are Earth's great evolutionary laboratories. Nowhere else do conditions vary so dramatically, from warm, shallow reefs filled with sunlight to trenches deeper than Mount Everest is tall, where pressure crushes all but the strongest forms. Within these extremes, life is constantly tested. Gigantism becomes one of the most striking experiments, a solution that has emerged across cephalopods, crustaceans, mammals, and countless other lineages. Each time it appears, it tells us something about the environment that fostered it. The giants are not random curiosities, they are data points, clues etched into living bodies about the state of our planet. One of the clearest lessons is about climate and oxygen. Cold waters, particularly those near the poles, dissolve oxygen more readily than warm seas. This simple chemical truth explains why polar waters are often filled with oversized creatures, from isopods as large as footballs to sea spiders with legs as wide as dinner plates. The abundance of oxygen fuels bodies that would suffocate in less generous waters. In warmer regions, gigantism is rarer, a reminder that the planet's climate and chemistry directly shape the size of its inhabitants. To study giants, then, is to study climate itself, to see how temperature and oxygen availability translate into flesh and bone. The giants also reveal patterns about ecosystems. A whale weighing 200 tons survives not by hunting enormous prey, but by filtering swarms of tiny krill. Its vastness reflects not only its biology, but the abundance of its food source. Similarly, colossal squid grow immense in part because their predators, sperm whales, are themselves colossal, creating an evolutionary arms race of size. Giants show us that ecosystems are networks of relationships, and that scale is often a consequence of those relationships stretching toward extremes. In this way, a giant is not only an individual, but also a reflection of the entire web of life it inhabits. Looking back through time, the fossil record tells the same story. During periods when oxygen was abundant in Earth's atmosphere and seas, giants thrived. Sea scorpions taller than humans, ammonites as wide as truck tires, and sharks longer than buses once dominated the waters. Their size reflects the planet's conditions at that time, a record as clear as any rock layer or ice core. To trace gigantism is to trace Earth's environmental history, to see how changes in air, water, and climate ripple outward into the very dimensions of life itself. And so, when we look at the giants alive today, we are not only looking at animals, we are looking at time capsules of Earth's story. The blue whale tells us of oceans still rich enough to sustain its size. The Greenland shark whispers of cold waters that allow lives to stretch across centuries. The colossal squid reminds us that battles still rage unseen in the dark, driven by the same pressures that sculpted monsters in prehistory. Each giant is a message from the earth saying, "This is what life becomes when conditions allow it." The emotional truth is that our planet breeds both monsters and miracles. To us, a jellyfish longer than a skyscraper is terrifying, its body alien, and its presence unsettling. Yet it is also a miracle of simplicity, proof that even fragile tissue can become vast and enduring. A whale breaching from the water is a monster of scale, but also a miracle of grace, its immensity carried with elegance. Giants hold both sides of this truth at once, reminding us that the line between wonder and fear is often thin, and that Earth produces both in equal measure. As we reach toward the end of this journey, the lesson of gigantism grows clear. Giants are not accidents. They are reflections, written in flesh, of the forces that shape our planet. And as we reflect on those forces, we are left with a lingering question. If Earth has always bred giants, and still does today, what else does the ocean keep hidden, waiting for us to discover? The giants of the sea are not just curiosities, not just oversized creatures meant to startle our imagination. They are evidence of something far greater, something woven into the very fabric of our planet. From whales heavier than dinosaurs, to squid with eyes that drink in the eternal night, to jellyfish whose tentacles drift longer than city blocks. Each one is more than an individual animal. Each is a story, a message, a reminder that the ocean does not just hide giants, it creates them. That is the truth that echoes across time. The fossil record shows us that giants have always been with us. Sea scorpions taller than people once crawled across ancient shores. Ammonites as wide as truck tires drifted through prehistoric seas. Sharks longer than buses hunted in waters that no human would ever swim. And today, giants still endure. The blue whale, alive in our own age, remains the largest animal ever to live in Earth's history. The colossal squid, once thought to be only myth, still drifts unseen in the abyss, locked in battle with whales that bear its scars. The Greenland shark, slow and ancient, still carries centuries in its body, alive in the cold darkness where time itself seems to move more slowly. The awe we feel when we learn of these beings is not an accident. It is part of what they are. Giants are nature's way of reminding us how small we are, not to diminish us, but to lift our eyes. They make us feel wonder, the kind that leaves us quiet and breathless. They remind us that the world is not finished, that mysteries remain, and that even now, with satellites in orbit and machines crawling across other planets, the ocean beneath our feet still holds surprises large enough to rival myth. And as we drift here together, letting the story of ocean giants move softly through our minds, the questions linger in the quiet spaces. What else is waiting in the trenches we have never explored? What shadows, larger than any we have yet seen, still pass beneath the sonar, silent and unseen? Could there be giants still being born, creatures beyond even the blue whale, awaiting conditions that will allow them to grow, as so many before them once did? These questions are part of the gift the ocean gives us, not answers, but mystery, a reason to keep searching, to keep wondering. The giants are not just monsters, though they can frighten us. They are miracles too, proof that life endures, adapts, and sometimes exceeds the limits we thought were fixed. They are fragile and strong, ancient and new, terrifying and beautiful. They are contradictions that coexist, a mirror of our own world, where light and darkness, fear and wonder, survival and mystery all intertwine. To reflect on them is to reflect on Earth itself, a planet that breeds extremes, that breeds monsters and miracles alike. And now, as we close this journey, I invite you to carry that sense of wonder with you. If this quiet exploration has helped you drift a little further into sleep or deeper into curiosity, I would love for you to share your thoughts. Which of these giants surprised you the most? Was it the whale that outweighs dinosaurs, or the squid whose arms bear hooks sharper than knives? Was it the jellyfish that seems made of silk, yet stretches longer than a skyscraper, or the ancient shark that may still swim today, older than the nations we live in? Tell me in the comments, because every answer is a glimpse into the way mystery lives inside each of us. And if you would like to join me again on these soft journeys into science, I would be grateful if you gave this video a gentle like and maybe tap subscribe. It helps others who are searching for a calm corner of curiosity find their way here, where science and sleep can meet. Together, we can wander into more mysteries, gently, without rush, letting wonder guide us. So for now, take one last deep breath. Let your body soften, let your thoughts quiet, and let the awe of the ocean giants settle around you like a tide. For though the sea may be vast and filled with shadows, we have learned one thing with certainty tonight. The ocean does not just hide giants, it creates them, and somewhere out there, in the dark waters beyond our reach, it may even now be creating the next.